chakra fire jutsus will hardly work against me and water ninjutsu will have a similar effect, disclosed Conan. Very good. If you want to get to know me on a personal level then, just ask, said Naruto emotionlessly. Conan wasn't sure if she should ask, other than Nagato. She hardly knew anyone in the Akatsuki. The only other member she liked was Itachi, and they have hardly spoken to each other. Later their food arrived and they ate in silence. Naruto woke up the next day early. He looked over at Conan, who was still wearing her cloak, sleeping on the bed. He got up and created 10 shadow clones, and ordered them to learn the Hiraishin that he inherited from his father. He knew that he couldn't learn such an advanced and powerful jutsu in a few days even with Shadow's clones and the Sharingan. It would take him a few weeks or a couple of months depending upon the difficulty of the jutsu. So the original Naruto meditated for a few hours. Even with the healing rate he had acquired from the Kyuubi, he still needed to meditate so he could sort out the memories of his clones. Conan woke up and the first thing she noticed was Ryu Yosuke meditating on his bed. His chest armor was off, allowing Conan to see his great muscles. And she also noticed that his low ponnet ale fell between his shoulder blades and was thin but not too thick. That was something she never noticed. And somehow he didn't have a single scar on his body. Wait, no. Adjusting her eyes to the light, Conan saw what appeared to be a point of contact for a lightning bolt which struck him over his heart, and its appearance was grisly to say the least. She had 1 or 2 scars on her body, but they were small and hard to locate. And still she never expected Yosuke to have blonde hair. She originally pegged him as a black. Deciding to use this time of meditation to her advantage, she subtly walked into the bathroom and stripped down naked. She peeked through the door to see Ryu still sitting there, unmoving. She turned on the shower and gracefully stepped in and started washing herself, but made Sir Ida remove her origami flower and Akatsuki ring. Her ring was white in color and had the kanji for white by on it. After she was down, Conan dried herself off with a towel, and she put all her clothes back on. She left the bathroom to find Zetsu and Ryu conversing with each other. They looked back at her. We have found Orochimaru's hideout, stated Naruto. Now Conan was interested. Our primary objective was to collect his ring, and killing him a secondary objective. His base is 17 kilometers southwest from our position, hidden within the ground. This will make getting into his lair all that much more difficult. Do we even know where the door to his hideout is? Asked Conan. But this time it was Zetsu who answered. The door is surrounded by trees and it's a metal hole in the ground. It's just like what Ryu said, it's 17 kilometers southwest from here, spoke Zetsu. With that in mind, Zetsu melded into the ground. Both Naruto and Conan were ready to depart. But Conan remembered to pay the receptionist, something that never came to mind for Ryu. Both walked towards their destination. There was little need to run. Then Conan remembered what Ryu said about getting to know each other and work cohesively as partners. Ryu, what do you like? Asked Conan. Ryu was caught off guard by this question. He couldn't remember what it was that he liked. I like training and expanding. My arsenal is a shinobi and fighting strong opponents, replied Naruto. Well, it was progress in character development. She expected him to brush off the question. And what do you dislike? She continued. He did say that if she wanted to know him as a person she would just have to ask. I dislike idiots, arrogant people, ignorance and snakes, spoke Ryu. Though Conan would never know that what he meant by snakes was actually Orochimaru. Then I get the feeling that you won't like Orochimaru, said Conan, and she received a nod of confirmation from Ryu. They now saw the metal hole in the ground, where Zetsu told them Orochimaru could be found. Well, this is it, said Ryu. Though Conan didn't notice his Sharingan spinning rapidly. Shikigami no Mai, thought Conan. Then her entire body was LDING into paper and then turning into paper butterflies. Naruto just watched unsurprised. She would have to get the paper from somewhere. My Shigakur no Jutsu, thought Naruto. His form then turned invisible and both Akatsuki members dived into the hole, one invisible and the other thousands of paper butterflies. They were now in a dark corridor lit with burning candles. We should inform the other if we find Orochimaru's ring or Orochimaru himself. We need to find a way to signal each other, whispered the invisible Naruto to paper butterflies. Then one of the butterflies became a paper aeroplane. Understanding, Ryu nodded his head. Conan had a way of contacting him but not the other way around. He then unsealed a paintbrush and chakra ink, and started drawing a seal on the paper aeroplane. This seal will heat up when I channel my chakra into it, letting you know that I have the ring, whispered Ryu. The aeroplane seemed to fly around him. Apparently Conan couldn't speak in paper form. Both went their separate ways in search of the ring. They searched numerous rooms, finding them empty. I mean, why would you have so many rooms if you weren't going to use them? Naruto made sure to pull up his hood on his coat. Orochimaru had seen him before and they might recognize him even with the loss of his whisker marks. Even though Kabuto and Orochimaru couldn't see them, Sasuke could with his Sharingan. And any other dojutsu user like Neji. He opened a door and there was nothing but a barren room. He opened another, except this time it wasn't empty. By a desk in the room was someone he hated. Kabuto Yakushi, the pet of Orochimaru, was fiddling with some medical salves. Then Naruto remembered something. Pain never ordered him to not kill the snake's puppets. Naruto drew his katana from its sheath on his back. Slowly and without a sound. He walked up to Kabuto at normal pace. If he went slow it would increase his reaction time and his body may be too fast for his mind to handle. He was now right behind Kabuto. He held his katana in a reverse grip and held it with both hands, ready to strike at the traitorous Leaf Nin's skull. He was about to administer the finishing blow, before Kabuto turned around and started walking out the room. Naruto didn't have much time to get out of the way of Kabuto's path. But he lucky his blade was 5 millimeters away from touching Kabuto. Luckily his Sharingan and Madara's Training helped him out a lot and he was able to divert his body away from Kabuto's. He watched as Yakushi slinked away from the desk to who knows where. Ryu sheathed his katana and walked out of the room. He kept searching and searching but there was no sign of Orochimaru's ring, but he knew the traitorous Sannin was here because if Kabuto was here then the serpent wasn't far behind. He opened another room and came upon a ghastly sight. There were innocent people locked behind bars and they looked skinny and malnourished. Naruto could even see some children among them. The old Naruto would have gone to any length to free these people, no matter the cost, even his own life. But the real Naruto wasn't like that. He dropped his invisibility and made himself known to the prisoners. Most if not all looked relieved to see him. "Please sir, save us," said a man trying to reach for Ryu's cloak but instead grabbed his boot. He only just noticed the oot coming down on his hand and with an audible crack the man's hand was broken beneath Naruto's heel. The man cried and Naruto didn't silence his cries. The other caged people were looking at Naruto with anxiety. Then Ryu went through some hand seals and ended on the tiger sign. "Aren't you gonna save us, mister?" said a small girl with tears in her eyes. "No," stated Naruto. "Kaden. Endin fire release, flame bullet," said Ryu as he spat out a large flame bullet at the imprisoned people. Their screams of pain reverberating through the base. Because Orochimaru experimented on people, these screams wouldn't draw anyone to him. Naruto watched the burning flesh of the innocent people, a small smile on his face. He envisioned the ignorant people of Konoha and all who had harmed or ignored him, and it felt good killing them. But yet he had set them free. How? Their suffering at the hands of Orochimaru must have been terrible and they were to be used again and again for human experimentation and torture. They would have wanted to die afterwards. Ryu activated his invisibility and walked out of the burning room. He walked around inspecting the rooms. Then he came upon an extremely large room, and there in the center was someone Ryu wanted to kill the most just to settle the score with. Sasuke Uchiha. The young Uchiha was practicing with his own sword of Kusanagi. His movements were fast and precise. Obviously had a good Kenjutsu teacher. Must have been Orochimaru, since the snake man fawns over the kid. Ryu was just watching the Uchiha with a scrutinizing eye. He could sense that he had improved much over the past 2 years, but the former Jinchuriki wanted to know how much. Then Naruto saw Sasuke do a Chidori variation, which was clever, improving upon the jutsu that killed him. Then Sasuke turned his sight towards the door. He could see someone shrouded in chakra thanks to Sharingan. "I know you're there," stated Sasuke. Naruto wasn't surprised and it seemed to still kept his arrogant attitude. Naruto deactivated his invisibility, letting Sasuke see his Akatsuki cloak plain as day. Sasuke wasn't expecting that but kept his expression devoid of emotion, as always. Thoughts were going through his head. Akatsuki is a group of S-ranked shinobi like Itachi. When I defeat him it will prove that I'm ready to kill Itachi, thought Sasuke. He also noticed Tat, the Akatsuki member, was wearing a hood shrouding most of his face. I wasn't expecting the Akatsuki, to be honest, said Sasuke to Ryu. Ryu smirked. By testing out my skills on you then I will be ready for Itachi, by killing you. Naruto chuckled. When you compare Itachi to Madara you would know that Itachi despite all his power is no match for the ancient Uchiha. Itachi is dirt to compared to Madara. And now Sasuke thinks he's ready to take on a shinobi who could rival Madara. That's completely laughable. Sasuke heard this chuckle and decided to make a point. Why are you chuckling? You should be cowering before me, because only a Uchiha can defeat an Uchiha, spoke Sasuke with that arrogant voice of his. Naruto just chuckled some more. Then you obviously don't remember all the losses that were handed to your clan by the Senju, spoke Ryu with that all-might smirk. Sasuke had enough and engaged Naruto in taijutsu by using the Uchiha's signature, Interceptor Fist. But Naruto just dodged or blocked his attacks as if they were slow to him. But the strange thing was he didn't attack back. Sasuke prepared his strongest punch aimed at Ryu's head, but to his utter shock Ryu caught his punch effortlessly. Sasuke jumped back, and went through hand signs. Kaden. Gokaku no Jutsu, Fire Release, Great Fireball Technique, shouted Sasuke as he blew out a fireball the size of a horse at Ryu. But to his shock again Ryu cut through the fireball with his wind-enhanced katana. Is that all you've got? Taunted Ryu. You killed the Kyuubi's container. I expected better. Where's your Uchiha superiority? Sasuke was angered over this and drew his own sword. They both clashed. Sasuke wasn't able to get even a scratch on the guy he just parried or strafed away from his attacks. Sasuke channeled his lightning chakra into his sword, increasing its cutting power. But Ryu just channeled his own wind chakra into his katana. The lightning-enhanced sword did little against the wind sword. Sasuke was fuming. A Verit he did against the man did little to nothing. He was supposed to be an Uchiha, an elite, but yet this nobody was toying with him. Stop toying around, he yelled. He aimed a slash at Ryu but was met with air. He just vanished. Behind you, whispered a voice. It was Ryu with his back against his. You know, this fight, if you could call it that, has been rather disappointing, informed Ryu. I expected better from Itachi's younger brother, baited Ryu. And it worked like a charm. Sasuke was furious, so he attempted to spin around and face Ryu. Instead Naruto elbowed Sasuke in the head, almost knocking him out. Sasuke keeled under the force of the elbow. It felt like a brick hitting his face. It's too bad after all that training. If you can't defeat me, how can you hope to defeat Itachi? Whispered Ryu in Sasuke's ear. He grabbed Sasuke by the back of his collar and held him in the air. You're not the only one who has the Sharingan, said Naruto as Sasuke looked into his eyes. Weak. You're still so weak. If you can't kill a member of the Akatsuki then you can't kill Itachi. Naruto chucked Sasuke a good distance away. But the Uchiha was wondering how this nobody had the Sharingan. I've gone easy on you, but remember, train harder, said Ryu with that smirk. Sasuke watched the Akatsuki member walk away from him. Wait, shouted Sasuke. Naruto turned his attention to him. Who are you? Asked Sasuke wearily. Ryu Yokes, said Naruto. I wonder how much bullshit can be avoided if I kill him right now, thought Naruto. But instead he knocked Sasuke out with his Sharingan-induced genjutsu. Naruto walked around the base some more when he caught sight of a paper aeroplane with a small seal on it. The paper flew around him a bit. Do you have the ring? Asked Ryu. The aeroplane nodded. Naruto was about to leave the underground hideout when he felt a presence behind him. Well, it looks like the Akatsuki have finally tracked me down, spoke a sickly sweet voice. Naruto turned around and came face to face with the man he hated most. Orochimaru, said Ryu blankly. Orochimaru knew from first glance that this man was new to the Akatsuki. Tell me, are you new to the Akatsuki, and if so what is your name? Asked Orochimaru with a frown. For if there was one thing he hated more than his home village it was his former Akatsuki colleagues he worked with. Yes, I am new to the organization and my name is Ryu Yokaze, said Naruto as he allowed Orochimaru to glimpse his eyes. Orochimaru gasped, seeing a pair of Sharingan that didn't belong to Itachi or Sasuke. Well, too bad, spoke Orochimaru sadly. I would love nothing more than to take your eyes for myself, and I can tell that you are stronger than Sasuke-kun Kukuku, however I don't think you will leave this place relatively unharmed. Sanageshu, hidden shadow snake hands, yelled Orochimaru as snakes shot out of his sleeve and at Ryu. Naruto took out his katana and sliced apart the snakes. However, when he looked up, the snake Sennin was gone. He deduced that the jutsu he used was only a diversion. He then took a step as a long blade shot out from under him and speared the roof above. Naruto channeled his lightning chakra into his katana and stabbed the ground where the blade came from. Orochimaru used the hiding like a mole no jutsu, hiding like a mole technique, to disappear in to the ground and attack with his snake sword. Orochimaru dodged the lightning blade that and jumped out from behind Ryu, but not before spitting out the snake that connected the sword. Ryu went rough the hand seals and prepared a jutsu, Raiden, Reikutai, lightning release, lightning orb. Naruto collected lifting chakra in the palm of his hand. It had a dark blue sphere around it with a small black ball with flickering lightning sparking off it. Naruto threw it at Orochimaru, where a bright light of lightning ensued. The result: a large chunk of the building structure was vaporized and took the shape of a ball. There was some leftover lightning flickering around. Ryu was about to walk away as objective complete, but he heard dark chuckling form behind him. Orochimaru burst from ground and expanded his mouth into inhuman lengths. Mandara no Jin, formation of 10,000 snakes, thought Orochimaru as thousands of snakes slithered out of his mouth and were heading directly at Ryu. Each snake opened its mouth and the blade of sword served as replacements for their tongues. Naruto did the only thing logical. He ran. He ran for a few minutes with the bladed snakes following after him. Then he remembered something. Why can't I just use that jutsu? Thought Ryu. He stopped and faced the snakes head on. The snakes then landed on top of him, presumably piercing his body. Orochimaru smirked. That was one member of the Akatsuki taken care of. But he frowned when he saw a white skeletal being with 4 arms, 4 glowing yellow eyes and 2 forward-facing bull horns. Now Orochimaru felt fear. What is that? He yelled within his mind. And Naruto answered him as if reading his mind. This, Orochimaru, is the perfect defense. Orochimaru was sweating tea. His thing in front of him was hellish in appearance and it literally struck fear into him. The Susanoo. And now I will finish what Itachi started, said Ryu. His Susanoo then started to form Numero. A white Magatama in between its hands, which were attached by a string of chakra, and threw them at Orochimaru, like shuriken. Fortunately for Orochimaru, he was barely able to dodge the shuriken-like projectiles, but he didn't notice that they created an explosive collision with the interior walls of the hall. Ryu, seeing his attack wasn't working, decided to change his attack pattern. He started going through some hand signs. Since he was in an enclosed area, he would have to lessen the size and destruction of the jutsu. Futon. Ryu Kisoku no Jutsu, wind release, dragon breath technique. Yelled Ryu. He blew out the head of a Japanese dragon the size of his body, which flew at Orochimaru. Don't get confused between the Koryu Kisoku no Jutsu, this is just a weaker version. Naruto then channeled a large amount of chakra into his right eye and whispered, Amaterasu. The wind dragon head was then set ablaze with black flames. Now it was cutting and shredding along with burning and scorching. Enten. Kanryu Kisoku no Jutsu, blaze release, blazing dragon breath technique. Orochimaru didn't have enough time before he was consumed in the tearing and incinerating dragon head. The hall was henna lit with black flames and the walls had deep scar-like marks. Ryu deactivated his Susanoo, which was still active. He looked at his handiwork, the blazing hall burning the walls. Objective completed. And finally he started walking away and back to the entrance of the hideout. Orochimaru's body was burning and bleeding terribly. He had underestimated the new Akatsuki member greatly. And those jutsus, the Susanoo and the blaze release combination with the wind, were magnificent. But he had bigger problems than thinking about that. Ignoring all the pain that was screaming at his body from fire and the throbbing deep cuts all over his body, Orochimaru widened his jaw like a snake and a pair of pale hands opened up like a serpent shedding its skin. The new Orochimaru escaped from his previous skin before the black flames could engulf. He no longer had any wounds, but the amount of chakra coupled with his wounds forced him to use a lot more than he expected. He was now panting heavily and coughing. Ryu Yoke's was now at the top of his hit list. Naruto was walking back to the entrance of the hideout. He was wondering if he really killed Orochimaru, but if so it wasn't important. He found Konan waiting for him at the entrance holding a ring between her fingers. She offered him the ring, in which she received a "thank you" in return. "I heard the sounds of fighting within the halls. Orochimaru?" she asked. "Yes, I fought him. Not sure if I killed him. The mon's like a roach. No matter how many times you flush them down the drain, they always happen to find their way back," spoke Ryu. Konan nodded her head at his assertion. You could never tell with Orochimaru. They exited the hideout and started walking back to the hidden rain, where they would receive their next orders. Boruto was mulling over his fight with, which was one-sided from his point of view. That was the first time he tried a combination with Blaze Release and the results pleased him greatly. He should have to try out more combinations with his Eternal Mangekyo, but with Wind Jutsu for the added devastation and power. But then a thought came to him, one of his goals among the Akatsuki. Eliminating the fake Madara. Pain wouldn't believe him, not since he just joined, even with Zetsu backing up his claim, and he knew that the fake only operated through Nagato. He would have to establish himself within E ranks and possibly have Konan join him, since her word among the establishment would outweigh his own. Thinking about getting Konan to join him was the easy part. Getting her to actually join him was a far more difficult thing. He also sensed that Nagato and Konan were close. They were not lovers but great friends, he believed. And Nagato was more likely to believe her than Zetsu any day, but he so needed proof that Madara was not Madara. But conspiracies such as these would take time. So now was a good time to enact his plan. "Konan, what do you like?" asked Naruto with his hood down. Konan blinked. Why was he asking such a question? "What do you mean?" she asked. "Well, since you wanted to get to know me better, I wish to extend the same courtesy," said Ryu. Seeing no problem with it since she did the same thing, Konan answered. "Well, I like origami and flower pressing along with helping pain," answered the Akatsuki member. Now Naruto knew why she loved origami, since her ninjutsu style was centered upon paper. But the flower pressing was new to him. But helping Nagato was no surprise. She seemed adamantly loyal to him, loyalty he could exploit. "And what do you dislike?" continued Ryu. "I dislike feeling useless and watching friends die," she replied. These dislikes were ultimately fueling Naruto to have Konan as an ally on his side. "I see those are very admirable and gorgeous qualities you have," said Naruto. Konan blushed at his compliment. She never expected such reaction out of him. She was sure he'd be disgusted by her hobbies. And being called gorgeous wasn't helping her fight her blush. It would take another day to reach Omegakure, and his sun was going down at their fastest speeds. They wouldn't make it to the village, and they passed by the inn they were a few days earlier, so they had to camp out during the night, in the forest. Unfortunately, neither of them bothered to pack a camp, so they had to make do with sticks and twigs for a fire and the ground as beds. Naruto wasn't bothered by the cold. Living in a dark, cold hovel for 2 years helped him out greatly. But Konan was a different story. She had tried to get to sleep, but the cold wind scratching her face was preventing her from doing so. She then felt something warm against her back. When she touched it with her hand, she felt clothing and fur muscles against it. "Don't worry," said Ryu out loud. His body was pressed up against her. It was to her an intimate and compromising position. "I saw you shivering, so I helped out." "I didn't ask you to help me," bit back Konan. Naruto still had the expressionless face of his. "Doesn't matter. You were cold and now you're warm," reassured Ryu. "Fine," relented Konan. She dozed off to sleep in the comfort of the blonde. When Konan woke up, he was shocked to find Ryu and herself in his arms. Their faces were a few centimeters apart, and his bosom was pressed up against him and her hands were on his chest. She looked at his face. It was calm and serene, but at the same time it looked similar to his usual expression. Her face turned a deep shade of scarlet, and she tried to ease herself out of his arms, but that only helped in making his grip on her stronger and resulted in pulling her face into his chest with his chin above her forehead. She knew that the only way to get out of his embrace was to wake him up, but the warmth he was generate ing from his core was quite soothing to her, and a part of her wanted to stay a little longer in his arms. She squirmed in his arms a little, but she looked back up to see a pair of Sharingan staring at her. To say she was intimidated a little was correct. Naruto let her out of his embrace and got up off the ground. "Did you sleep well?" questioned Ryu. Konan nodded her head at this. She didn't see the red stain that adorned her partner's cheeks. "We should continue on to Omegakure." He was stopped by Konan, who held out her hand, which had Orochimaru's former ring in it. "Take it. It's yours now," she urged. The ring was slate blue in color and had the kanji for Sky Kong in the middle. Naruto took the ring from Konan's hand and placed it on his armored right index finger. They then began their journey back to Omegakure. They were now at Omegakure and were walking to the tallest tower. Konan used her signature paper jutsu and turned into paper butterflies and flew across the village, while Ryu used his invisibility jutsu and walked to the tower. They found Pain in his usual place staring at the village. "Were you successful?" said Pain as he turned towards Naruto. Ryu showed him the ring on his finger. "Is Orochimaru dead?" "I'm not sure. Orochimaru has a habit of escaping death," stated Ryu. "It doesn't matter as long as you have the ring," said Pain. "Zetsu has informed me of your cooperation and the success of your assignment, therefore I have decided to make you two permanent partners." Konan was a little saddened by this. Naruto just inwardly smirked. Nagato was making his plans easier for him. Konan got over her bout of sadness and held her neutral expression. "It was easier for everyone if she cooperated. I will contact the Akatsuki and tell them the news of a new confirmed member," said Pain as he did the hand sign for the Gentoshin no Jutsu magic lantern body technique. Both Naruto and Konan did the necessary hand seal, and they found themselves back in the same dark room with the burning lantern in the middle. Then astral images of the other Akatsuki members became visible. "Ryu Yokais is now a full member of the Akatsuki," informed Pain. Kisame smirked. He liked Ryu. Deidara as well. He respected Yokaze's version of art. You couldn't see Sasori's expression. Kakazu grinned. He liked Ryu a lot since he caused so much trouble for Hidan. Itachi was unreadable and Hidan fumed. He was hoping Orochimaru would kill the prick. "And he will be partnered with Konan permanently," said Pain. "Now within a year we will begin the capture and extraction of the Biju, and 2 years from then we will capture the Kyuubi. Until we begin our true operation within a year we will be gaining funds for the Akatsuki." All the members nodded at this. "I will relay the missions and assignments, and if I cannot, Zetsu will." Then the astral bodies started disappearing. Naruto and Konan were brought back to their original positions. They spared each other glances. Red met Amber and Amber met Red. They both walked out of the room and gathered any necessities they would need for any of their traveling. Then Pain approached them. "We have received various missions from Kirigakure. From the Mizukage herself. I will send you two there to complete any missions that require your capabilities and attention." "Very well, Leader Sama," said Ryu. He sealed some things his seals on his wrist and made sure to check if he missed anything. Naruto had never been to the Land of Water. He wanted to see how the country differed from the Land of Fires, and he wanted to meet the Mizukage, whose beauty is said to rival Tsunade's. He wanted to see if those rumors were true. He strapped his katana to his back, dusted off his cloak, and he and Konan left Omegakure behind eating towards the Land of Water and Kirigakure. Who knows, maybe there would be some unexpected surprises there. Pain was staring over Omegakure. He silently hoped that Ryu would keep Konan safe, his last friend. And if not, he would face the wrath of God. Though the strange thing that bothered the Akatsuki leader was Yokais himself. He had never heard of the man before, nor any inkling of his existence. He just fell out of the sky. No one knows anything about him, and Zetsu claimed that he would be a valuable asset to the organization. Nagato just hoped he was right. He also hoped that Ryu was able to kill Orochimaru. The traitor to the Akatsuki who took joy and euphoria for meddling with their plans could still be alive, or he would be 6 feet in the ground. Also, how did Ryu possess the Sharingan? All the Uchiha corpses left over from the massacre were destroyed so that no one would get the precious Keki Genkai. He knew what happened when someone outside of the Uchiha clan transplanted Sharingan. Kakashi Hatake is the prime example. So is Ryu an Uchiha. Or is he a copycat? From behind Pain a swirling distortion appeared. And out came a orange spiral mask with a single eye hole, black spiky hair and a Akatsuki cloak. So you have found a new member, I hear, said the man with the orange mask. His name is Ryu Yokais, a very powerful youth whom we might thank for the supposed death of Orochimaru, said Nagato without turning towards the visitor. He might have been able to kill Orochimaru. That is quite impressive, not many people can match the Snake Sannin, praised the masked man. I heard he has the Sharingan. Is this true, Nagato? Spoke the man. Pain scowled at the man to whom he was working with. Yes, although I am not sure if he is an Uchiha or not, you may talk to him. When he arrives in the land of water with his partner Konan, informed Nagato. Very good, maybe in her presence the first meeting won't be as awkward or catastrophic as I assumed, said the man. Until we meet again, good day, Nagato. The man in the mask disappeared within a whirling vortex, leaving no trace that he was in the room. The masked man reappeared within a strange dimension surrounded by white cubes. Impossible. Could this person be a survivor of the massacre? No, Itachi and I killed everyone, even the children except for Sasuke, and it can't be him, he's not strong enough to join the Akatsuki, and he would never join as long as Itachi is among the organization, frantically thought the masked man. But still, this can still present an opportunity I have been waiting for, another lieutenant alongside Kisame. Someone who can help create the weapon forged from the Biju's chakra, spoke the man within in his mind. Though I'm going to have to learn all I can about Yokais, what makes him tick like clockwork. Any family, goals, ambitions. I need to learn everything there is to know about Ryu Yokais, then this world will finally know pain and hatred. Elsewhere in the land of water, two cloaked figures were walking the road towards Kurigakure. They wore black cloaks emblazoned with red clouds, and they wore conical straw hats with bangles flapping around their cloaks. High collars along with their hats obscured most of their faces except their eyes. One was a royal honey color while the other was blood red with 3 concentric tomos surrounding the pupil. At the moment they were having a friendly argument. Are you sure we're going the right direction? Asked the larger of the two. He tilted his hat with his hand showcasing his Keki Genkai, the Sharingan to the entire world. Yes, answered his partner blankly, whose voice sounded like a woman's. We should be nearing Kurigakure within a few hours. However, stated the other person, it will be nightfall, soon, and the mist will be akin to a maze. We should rest for the night before we see the Mizukage tomorrow. The other wanderer nodded at her partner's reasoning. They weren't going to make the same mistake as last time they went off wandering. They brought tents and sleeping bags, also food this time. They both took out a scroll from within their cloaks and unsealed whatever was in there. 2 tents poofed into existence. The larger companion went off to collect firewood while the other went fishing by a nearby lake. 2 hours later both returned to the campsite, one with wood while the other fish. They created a campfire and the large one lit the fire using his own chakra. And they cooked the fish for dinner. After they were done with their surprisingly delicious fish, both went to Saint, for they were unaware with what the Mizukage wanted. Speaking of the Mizukage, Mai Terumi, the Godime, was signing off on the cage's greatest enemy, paperwork. Create a rebellion, they said. It'll be fun, they said. No one told me about all this god-awful paperwork that came with the job. If I knew it involved paper I would have gotten on the first boat to Kumo, thought the Mizukage sadly. She then heard voices from outside her office door. One was a rather distinctive voice that carried itself in a stoic yet noble way. And in walked her 2 favorite shinobi, Ao and Chojuro. Ao, Choju. Ro, has there been any news or sightings of the organization we contracted? Asked Mai in her business mode. Why yes and no, Mizukage-sama, answered Chojuro. Mai raised her left eyebrow at the young swordsman. Youth these days. What he means is, Mizukage-sama, is that we have no sightings on the 2 men we contracted, but we have picked up their presences in the land of water, responded Ao. How? Veer, what the Mizukage heard was an entirely different thing. No sightings on men, repeated the Mizukage. Shall we arrange to meet with these 2 gentlemen? Asked Ao. But the Mizukage heard differently again. Arranged with gentlemen, as in to be married, thought Mai. Outtaking Mei's silence as a yes, decided to keep on talking. Well, to be honest, I would rather prefer later rather than sooner. I just don't trust the youths these days always. Then Ao continued jabbering on about youth and Chojuro was being his shy self. Get married later than sooner. You don't have any youth. She continued to misinterpret her subordinate when he said something else. All hearts are voided things anyway. Finished Ao about his sentence, we will never know. Marriage. Hearts are voided. That being the last thing that out the nail in the coffin. The Mizukage got out of her desk with a dark look in her eye and walked up to Ao and whispered in his ear while smiling. Shut up or I'll kill you. Ao seemed like he had just seen the devil and his face went ghost white and his mind was blank. Hopefully he would take that threat to heart. Naruto woke up in the dead of night. Another nightmare had haunted him. It was like this ever since he joined Madara as his student. He would wake up once a week to a new nightmare or a repurposed old one. Since they never seemed to go away, Naruto instead called them night terrors. But he never woke up kicking or screaming. He would wake up silently, no sweat on his brow. He wouldn't talk because he knew there would be no point. He didn't need consoling. It was pathetic to him and pitiful in every word. Another one, whispered Naruto in the wind. His new night terror was oddly different from the rest. He left his tent and his Akatsuki cloak behind, opting to wear his armor and hooded coat. He was now standing outside his camp looking up at the bright stars. They say light can be found within the darkest places, breathed Naruto. Such a idiotic notion. The night is the perfect example of this. Despite how dark and black the night is, there are always lights dotting its sky, but to crush those small lights in the sky you require more darkness to smother those lights. So long as one spark remains, the dark places of this world can never truly reign. Isn't that right, Zetsu? Zetsu appeared in front of Naruto, only its Venus fly trap was visible. But it opened up to reveal the black and white halves of Zetsu. You're quite the philosopher, Naruto, complimented the white half. If I didn't become a shinobi, a philosopher is not something I have the time nor the patience to become, bit back Naruto while staring at the sky. You ordered me here for a reason? Asked the black half, partially annoyed. After leaving Aim Naru, to secretly ordered Zetsu to meet with him, though for what reason the artificial human was not aware of. The Yondaime Mizukage, answered Naruto. Both halves of Zetsu were confused. Why was Naruto interested in a dead cage? So you called us here just to talk about the Yondaime Mizukage, said Zetsu. Yes, replied Naruto, still staring at the stars. There was a light breeze that rustled Naruto's blue rope belt and coat. When I was ordered to head to Kirigakure, something popped up within my mind regarding the village. Zetsu was listening intently. Well, the white half was, but the black half was bored. A few years ago I met a rogue Kiri shinobi who was a former swordsman of the mist, Zabuza Momochi. Naruto then thought back to when he met Zabuza years ago. I later learned that he tried to assassinate the Yondaime Mizukage but fled the village when he failed, and he also told me how he butchered an entire class of aspiring ninjas single-handedly when he was boy. I later researched the Yondaime Mizukage and his tyrannical rule of the village, continued Naruto. Everyone in the shinobi world knows of Yagura the Sanbi Jinchuriki, who also became a Kage, but not everyone knows about Yagura before he became a Kage. Now Zetsu's interest was piqued. Shortly after I arrived in the Land of Water, I created a Kage Bunshin to research the Yondaime in one of the local libraries. Jaeger, despite being mistrusted in the village, had apparently a heart of gold. He was kind, friendly and driven. So what happened to him? Asked Zetsu. From all the history that I have read about Yagura before he was the Mizukage, painted a picture of someone who could do no wrong and radiated like the sun, who could instill loyalty in every heart and bring hope to the despaired, said Naruto. That all changed when he became the Mizukage, spoke Naruto. His entire psyche did a complete turn around. He became violent, cruel in his brutal way of leading the village and forced its bloody mist title, continued Naruto. He executed anyone who stood in his way or who rebelled against him. He made terror his weapon, and he was deceitful when he changed the views of his village against the bloodline users. Many feared him and respected him, but his acts of oppression didn't stop there. He held public shows of bloodline users being tortured and killed, even children. But one thing leads me to believe one thing, proclaimed Naruto. Someone like Yagura going from happy and gentle to cruel and cold doesn't happen overnight. I'm not a psychologist, but I know a case like Yagura's doesn't happen like that, ever, said Naruto. So you believe that, uttered Zetsu. Yagura was being manipulated by Genjutsu, said Naruto. But how? As you said, Yagura is a Jinchuriki and Genjutsu do not work on Jinchuriki who have control of their Biju, voiced Zetsu. I'm not talking about ordinary Genjutsu, but yes, Genjutsu doesn't work on Jinchuriki who have control of their beasts, however for someone with the Sharingan. Muttered Naruto. You don't mean, whispered Zetsu. Exactly, the fake Madara was controlling Yagura and plotted the annihilation of the bloodlines and weakening Kurigakure. Declared Naruto, who was now facing Zetsu. I see, the Sharingan is one of two Keki Genkai that can control Biju, but you must have extensively powerful eyes to control a Biju in the first place. And if he restrained the beast with his eyes, he could control the jailer easily, exclaimed Zetsu. Precisely, the copycat was here in the land of water controlling the Yondaime Mizukage, said Naruto as he narrowed his eyes. We can use this opportunity to find Obito's location and eliminate him before he ruins my plans or breaks my pawns. Zetsu, go to Kurigakure and find out as much information about the Yondaime. The bloodline purges, the Kiri no Shinobigatana Shichinan-shu, 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, the Sanbi, and any history the mist has with the Uchiha clan or anything connected to the Uchiha clan. The hunt begins, proclaimed Naruto. Nodding to his master, Zetsu disappeared within the ground and headed to Kurigakure to complete his objectives. Naruto was alone in his thoughts. It's an ingenious way of weakening a ninja village. Taking control of the leader who is well respected and strong would allow Obito to control the village with fear or respect. He knew that he couldn't just execute everyone in the village just to weaken it. Even a cage is no match for an entire village of shinobi. Instead he opted to erase a large part of the military strength in the Miz by ridding itself of its Keki Genkai, such as the Hyoten ice release, and also the reason why I had Zetsu look into the swordsman was to see if any were his pawns, such as Kisame Hoshigaki, who I believe is in league with Obito because he supported Yagura during his reign as Mizukage, but still, why Kurigakure in the first place? If I was in Obito's place I'd weaken Konagakure instead, so which leads me to suggest that Kiri had something to do in Obito's life after his death. Knowledge is one of the branches of power. If you understand your enemy as you understand yourself, then taking his life will be as easy as taking yours, thought Naruto as he remembered one of the lessons Madara taught him. Neither the student nor the subordinate noticed the shadow that was watching them. A shadow with blue hair and amber eyes. Orochimaru was stewing within his chamber contemplating killing Ryu Yokeis or taking his Sharingan. He had underestimated the Akatsuki and that cost him greatly. The Black Fire and the Skeletal Warrior were jutsu he had never seen before, also that Wind Dragon jutsu was no pushover either. The door to his chamber opened up to reveal his apprentice Sasuke Uchiha. Hello Sasuke-kun, drawled Orochimaru. Sasuke didn't do anything other than stare at his master. I require more training if I am going to kill Itachi, Orochimaru. Orochimaru smirked at the youngest Uchiha. After my recent fight with a member of the Akatsuki has shown me I'm not ready to, but he was stopped when Orochimaru silenced him with his hand. Sasuke-kun, when are you going to stop hiding it from? Sasuke narrowed his eyes at the Sannin. What do you mean? Questioned Sasuke, but he had an idea of what the snake was asking. What I mean is, when are you going to let me know? End the secret of you having the Mangekyo Sharingan, spoke Orochimaru. Sasuke widened his eyes in fear and surprise. And I don't understand why you didn't use it against our dear friend from the Akatsuki, Ryu, said Orochimaru. Silence was all there was between the two of them, but seeing as how Orochimaru already knows, he should answer him. I know that the Mangekyo causes me to lose vision in my eyes when I tested one of its jutsu, and from that lesson I am saving my Mangekyo for Itachi, answered Sasuke. Orochimaru's smirk was still there and he was a little disappointed that he never knew of the eye's weakness. Nodding at his apprentice, Orochimaru agreed with him. If he had the Mangekyo he would save for stronger opponents. They both got up and went to the training ground within the base. Sasuke's humiliating defeat would only strengthen him until he faced Itachi. A fully clad man in black armor was standing in a burning forest. He was unafraid of the whipping flames and the tortuous heat. He was seemingly happy at all the devastation that was wreaked within the forest. He wanted to watch the world burn like the fire burning the trees and create a new one where no impurities were occupying it. The world he lives in is an imperfect one. Hatred and fear had literally devoured the world, nations mistrusted one another, and enemies killed innocents out of paranoia and fear. The world he would create would have none of that, no war, no fear, no pain. Those would be absolute in his world. The black-clad man pulled down his hood revealing his golden spiky locks. His Sharingan was searching over the desolation. His face was expressionless and his thoughts were empty. The wind amongst the flames were strong and sharp, the breeze effortlessly cutting his face, but he felt no pain nor did he flinch. He then heard a voice off in the distance. A familiar voice that recognized. He strode towards the location the voice was coming from. With each step he took, ash would cover his clawed boots. However, it seemed like the ash moved on its own, taking the forms and faces of people he once knew, whispering his name. There was an feral-looking boy with a puppy, a masked ninja, 2 children with white eyes. An old man wearing a hat with the kanji for fire on it, a chubby boy with swirls on his cheeks, a pink-haired girl, a shark-like man, the list went on. He kept walking, ignoring the ash-like apparitions. Their whispers were like teeth against his ear, their claws were grasping his spine. Their breath was clouding his sight and their eyes were penetrating his thoughts. In one last effort to have the samurai-like man listen to them, they tried grasping his body so that he would hear what they had to say. However, the moment their hands came in contact with his body, they dissipated into ash and fell to the ground. One by one, out of the corners of his eyes, the blond man saw the ghosts collapsing into ash. But his steely gaze was focused on one thing, the path ahead of him. The fires that were burning the forest was still scorching the trees but not destroying them. He looked up into the sky and beheld no sun nor the moon, only the gray clouds that matched the color of the ash on the ground. He finally exited the searing forest and beheld a gray, barren wasteland devoid of life. There were no mountains, no rocks or vegetation, just the gray, flat ground. He continued walking onwards towards his destination. For what felt like hours was only minutes to the blond man. He kept walking to where he would finally stop. Then he found it. A spiky, haired blond boy wearing a orange jumpsuit sitting on the ground peering into a puddle of gray, dirty water. He was holding a necklace in his hands that had a green gem and accessories on it. When he red-eyed man looked at the boy, he could see fresh tear streaks and dead-looking eyes. He trailed the edges of the gray puddle so that he was standing in front of the boy. He sat down opposite the kid. He had only noticed that his eyes were red and puffy and his entire body looked lifeless and deprived of color. He too stared into the puddle, but there was no reflection. He looked back up at the boy to see him staring at him with his dull blue eyes. "You were once like me," said the boy wearily. He fiddled with necklace in his hand, almost like playing with it. The blond man just stared at the boy with a calculating gaze. Was he threat or a messenger? "I was never like you," spat the man. He already hated this kid and he only spoke 5 words to him. "No, you were different once, less than what you are now," stated the boy. The man narrowed his eyes at the kid in orange. "What a stupid color. You don't know me, so don't think you do," snarled the man. This kid was getting on his nerves. "I know you better than you know yourself," said the kid matter-of-factly. "You were once happy. You were always happy no matter the situation. No matter how much pain was thrown at you, you always smiled. Smiled that you knew things would get better in your life. I miss that smile," said the boy sadly. The man clenched his fist. This rat was claiming he knew him better than anyone. What a foolish thing to say. "Look into the pool," said the boy. Ultimately deciding to swallow his pride, the man gazed into the puddle. It was black and dirty and nothing was visible. "What am I supposed to see in this?" grunted the man as he gestured at the puddle. "Just keep looking and then you will see," said the boy. Complying, the man looked into the pool. At first all he saw was dirty water, but the image began to change and swirl around. An image of the man appeared wearing a Konoha headband, being thanked and praised by the people around him, which he was able to tell that they were Konoha citizens. The images themselves looked like they were sketched by an artist. Then the image shifted to a different picture. He saw himself having fun with his friends at a bar, celebrating his birthday and showering him with precious gifts. Having an awesome party. The man narrowed his eyes at the pool. What did this mean? The painting changed again to him wearing white and red robes along with a blonde-haired woman with a big bust laying a red hat with the kanji for fire on his head. And he turned and faced the crowd where he was met with thunderous applause. The final image showed him holding something. There was also a pink-haired woman with emerald eyes standing next to him. This image most of all confused him the most. What were these images and what did they mean? The thing he was holding was none other than a baby. A blonde-haired baby with emerald eyes. Both the blonde man and the pink-haired woman were smiling the most beautiful smiles anyone could see. The image changed to both parents teaching their infant how to walk and feeding him, but they both had the exact same smile, and the baby was happily laughing with its parents. Somehow this picture made him empty, bitter and melancholy. What was this supposed to mean? These pictures were confusing him to no end. What did these images mean? And who is that man in the painting? Asked the black-clad man mournfully. His eyes never left the baby. Just how much sway did one tiny being have over him? They are missed opportunities, answered the young boy. What? Bit back the man. If you hadn't stayed with that man, this is what would have happened instead of what you are today, answered the boy pensively. Still staring at the baby, the man was disgusted by what he saw. He channeled a large amount of chakra into his right eye, activating his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. The scythe-like shuriken pattern appeared, and with it, black flames alit the dirty pool of water, burning it. His eyes never left the small Kai LD until the flames burned away the water. He turned his sight back to the boy. There is nothing in my heart but hatred, said the man. He got up from his sitting position, and so did the boy. They were now standing before each other. Who are you? Growled the man. He was clenching his fist and lightly gritting his teeth. Angry is not the correct word to describe him at the moment. I was you, answered the child. The man's eyes still had that steely gaze. The child held out his hand and placed the necklace into his counterpart's right hand. I miss that smile, said the boy. The man tightened his fist, clenching the necklace. His left hand reached over his shoulder and unsheathed the katana on his back, and in one swift motion killed the boy with a diagonal slash. Blood instantly exploded. Dead from the horrendous gash on the child's chest, and the blood splayed the man's face and bloodied his hair. The boy's blood flowed from his body, staining the ground, becoming a large puddle of red. I was never and will never be like you, said the man. Naruto jolted from his sleep with sweat pouring down his forehead. What was that? Questioned Naruto. It apparently was another of his nightmares. However, it was the same nightmare he had experienced the night before. Everything concerning his dreams was confusing him. That was something else entirely. What did it mean? Why me? Were only some of the questions running through his mind. The blonde had never experienced such a dream before. It felt real. He was the one that gripped the sword, and he also heard the whispering against his ear as if someone was actually telling him in person. His face was in his hands and he was breathing more calmly. He was put through the worst kind of torture by the old goat, so for something to affect him like this was indeed something, and he also believed that a simple dream made him like this. Then it was truly pitiful, and it made him feel weak. And if there was one thing he hated, it was feeling weak. Deciding to get ready to move and begin their travel to Kurigakure, Naruto got dressed into his black armor and black tattered coat. He pulled the Akatsuki cloak over his body and strapped his katana sheath across his back. He exited his tent and beheld his campsite that he shared with Konan. The campfire was doused long ago, and they had rid themselves of the leftovers of their food. Naruto turned back to his tent and took out a scroll, went through a couple of hand seals and slammed his palm onto the scroll. He sealed the tent into the scrolls and bound the scroll with some twine. He looked over his shoulder and stared at Konan's tent. He wondered if she was awake or was she not inside the tent at all. Remembering all the beatings he got from women years ago, Naruto decided to use caution. Despite being powerful, he knew that nothing was more fearsome than a pissed-off woman. He said just loud enough to hear. But he received no answer. He said her name again but was met with the same result. Being smart, he created a cage bunshin and his clone opened the tent for him. The clone peered inside the tent but was met with nothing but an empty living quarters. The clone poofed out of excess. Tense, and the memories went back to Naruto. Where could she be? Given that her tent is still here, she must be nearby. deduced Naruto. Slipping back into his Ryu persona, he went to look for Conan. A few minutes of searching through the forest, Ryu found the same lake where Conan went fishing for their food. But instead of finding a fish, he found his beautiful partner, naked and bathing. Her CK was facing him and she had yet to notice his presence. Naruto had a large blush on his cheeks. Beneath that cloak she had a killer body that most women would kill for. Naruto also got a good look at her, deciding to not suffer a beating from someone who he suspected was a powerful woman. Naruto decided to leave before he was caught. "I know you're there," stated Conan emotionlessly. Naruto knew he was in trouble but didn't show it. He never showed fear. It was letting your enemies know one of your weaknesses, and it was a weakness he despised, but he didn't mind taking advantage of the fears of others. "How did you know?" asked Ryu. He didn't make a sound, nor did she see him, so how did he was there in the first place? Was she a censor? Wasn't masking his chakra signature? "I didn't." "Well, not until you spoke up." Naruto face faulted at her answer. She never knew he was there, so he actually just revealed himself to her. "You're quite devious," complimented Ryu. Given how she just made a fool of him, he deduced that she was what he stated. "Thank you. Now if you please, I like to bathe in private," said Conan unemotionally. Naruto turned on heel and left not before saying to meet him back at the camp. Naruto was waiting for his blue-haired partner in their camp. He had been 15 minutes since he left Conan and he was currently wondering why women take so long when they were bathing. It was one of the unsolved mysteries of the world. Zetsu then appeared from the ground in his usual manner. "Have you found anything from your search?" questioned Naruto. "Yes, and you were correct," said Zetsu. Naruto raised his eyebrow. "Wouldn't more details and explanations be useful?" "Which part?" spoke Naruto. "That the Yondaime was being controlled," said the white half. "In a report written by an Oinin who had a transplanted Byakugan, Jaeger was indeed being controlled by Genjutsu, and that the puppet master supposedly had the Sharingan." Naruto smirked. He was always right. "I have more information regarding the swordsman of the mist," said the black half. Apparently one of the swordsmen, Fubuki Tsukazan, was selling his village's secrets and aided the bloodline rebels until his death. But it was Kisame Hoshigaki who killed him and was later approached by the Yondaime, applauding him for his devotion and duty. If Kisame was approached by Yagura, then I can only assume that he's one of Obito's lieutenants, and if so then he may have an idea where the fake is, contemplated Naruto. However, it had been years since the Yondaime's death, and so Kisame may be a loyal follower, and if so it will be harder to recruit. I was unable to find any information that was connected between the bloodline purges and the fake Madara other than Obito tried to weaken the village, said White Zetsu. "Were you able to find anything linking Kiri and the Uchiha clan along with the Sanbi?" asked Naruto emotionlessly as usual. "That is the most interesting thing we have to say," said Zetsu. Now Naruto's attention was piqued. On a mission during the Third Shinobi World War, one of Obito's teammates was captured by Kiri and turned into the Sanbi Jinchuriki. They were supposed to utilize a plan where they would release the Sanbi in the middle of Konohagakure, where the Biju would destroy the village. However, they were followed by Oinin, who were to release the Three Tails, but Kashi discovered their presence and they fled. Rin Nohara, which was the Jinchuriki's name, was later killed by Kakashi Hatake and the Sanbi's chakra was dispersed, but when Kiri tried to recover their possession, they found all the Oinin and the body of Rin on the ground, drenched within a sea of blood created by trees that were decorated with corpses. "No wonder Obito wanted to weaken Kiri," mused Naruto. "Thank you, Zetsu, for all this knowledge. The predator is now closer to the prey," smirked Naruto. But Zetsu was a little taken back by that smirk. It wasn't his usual annoying smirk. No, this was a bloodthirsty and deathly smirk. One that promised pain. "Conan should be returning soon, so you better leave," suggested Naruto as he regained composure of himself. "Do you want to spend time with your girlfriend, Naruto?" White Zetsu for some reason got even whiter at the gaze he was receiving from Naruto's Sharingan. "Zetsu," said Naruto. "Yes," answered White Zetsu wearily. "How do you picture your death?" asked Naruto as if he was asking for the time of day. Zetsu didn't answer. He was too afraid, or he didn't want to piss Naruto off more. "Do you want me to choose your death for you?" With every word White Zetsu's fortitude was breaking. "I can think of a few ways for you to die. With that Zetsu disappeared. Naruto smirked. It worked every time whenever he would say that sentence. Conan returned a few minutes later. They packed their equipment and restarted their journey to Kiri. At the gates to Kurigakure, Ao was waiting patiently for the arrival of the Akatsuki. The problems they were facing in Kurigakure required high-level shinobi, and they were short-handed on high-level shinobi. "I see them coming," shouted a Kiri nin, who held binoculars in his hand. Ao pointed to a random shinobi. "You go and inform the Mizukage," commanded Ao. The shinobi quivered a little and sped off towards the Mizukage's office. Ao activated his Byakugan and observed the incoming shinobi. But he was able to get a view of their chakra. The first on had the chakra levels of a low to mid-kage, which slightly surprised him, but he soon remembered that the Akatsuki were S-rank shinobi for a reason. But it was the second one that scared him a little. The second Akatsuki had gargantuan chakra levels, even surpassing those of a kage, maybe even a biju. Ao had heard of shinobi who had chakra levels that rivaled a biju, such as the Yondaime Raikage and Kisame Hoshigaki, the Kurigakure no Kaijin monster of the hidden mist, but this chakra unnerved him a bit. It was bright like the sun radiating on a field of grass, but cold like a remorseless winter. Just by looking at his chakra, Ao could claim that his blood was freezing in his arteries. Who was this member of the Akatsuki? Ryu and Conan were nearing the gates of Kurigakure. Conan was deep in thought and her body was on autopilot. Why would Zetsu be meeting with Ryu? The events from a few nights ago intrigued her. And who was this Obito Uchiha? Who was Ryu Yokaze? And why were they talking about the Yondaime Mizukage? And the fact that the cage was being controlled astounded her, and how did this involve Kisame and the other ninja swordsmen? Conan was broken from her thoughts when she and Ryu were greeted by a Kiri nin with an eye patch. "Welcome to the village hidden in the mist. I'm Ao," Mizukage-sama had instructed M. "Eat a guide to escort you to her office, but be warned, try anything funny in our village and we'll put you down," said Ao sternly. Apparently he didn't trust the Akatsuki. "You have nothing to fear as long as your village is contracting the Akatsuki and pay us in the end, there will be no trouble," replied Conan stoically. Ao nodded but still kept his eye on the other Akatsuki. "You will have to remove your hats when meeting with the Mizukage," said Ao. Both parties walked the rest of the way towards the Mizukage tower. As Naruto was walking around the village, he scrutinized all the architecture and stores that he passed by. Kiri was different from Konoha. For one, the towers and buildings were cylindrical and there was mist, lots of mist. When they arrived at the Mizukage tower, Naruto had a sense of deja vu. The tower was eerily similar to the Hokage tower that he remembered. They entered the tower and climbed up the steps leading to the office. Mei Terumi was sitting in her office doing paperwork. She heard a knock at her door and signaled, "Enter." Ao came in along with two cloaked figures wearing black cloaks with red clouds, and they wore conical straw hats. "If you could please remove your hats, I would like to see the faces of the people I have contracted," asked Mei sweetly. Naruto and Conan did what she asked. Mei scanned the two shinobi in front of her. Wait, a shinobi and kunoichi. She scanned the kunoichi first, and she had to compliment her beauty. She could rival her as well as Tsunade. But it was the shinobi to the kunoichi's left that made her breathless. He was rather tall and his face was well narrowed. He had roundish eyes that were slightly narrow. He had chin-length strands of hair that framed the sides of his face, and a few strands fell in between his eyes and parted at his nose with a low ponytail that fell between his shoulder blades. But she never expected to see such a hair color. It was a golden yellow, but he had a pair of Sharingan in his eyes. All in all, this man was a god of beauty. Mei had to force her blush down in order to think coherently. "Welcome to Kurigakure," welcomed Mei softly, never taking her eyes off Ryu. "Thank you for your hospitality, Mizukage-sama. I'm Conan and this is my partner Ryu Yokaze." Before Conan could continue her sentence, a gasp was heard from within the room. Everyone turned their eyes towards Ao, who was shivering a little and biting his lip to prevent him from talking further. But when he looked into Ryu's Sharingan, did his teeth start chattering and he was shaking even more. If he was honest, he was afraid of those eyes after all his encounters with Shisui Uchiha. But it was Naruto's that frightened him. There was something dark about them. Naruto made no move other than turning his head in. Ao was staring into those deep crimson. Ao could have sworn that the world darkened and that a shadow appeared behind Ryu. but before he was able to investigate, the Shadow Owl was knocked to his senses by Mei asking him to politely leave. With that, Owl Power walked hastily out of the office, not even sparing a glance. "Please forgive that intrusion, would you please continue, Conan-san?" said Mei in her business tone. If Owl tried something that was interrupting her business, then she would melt him. "Thank Mizukage-sama. As I said, I'm Conan and this is Ryu Yoke's. We were the ones assigned to any missions that Kirigakure or the Land of Water has," spoke Conan neutrally. Ryu wasn't listening because he was watching the door that Owl left through. "So it seems that the Kuro Ryu's Black Draw Gone reputation reaches here in the Land of Water as well. Interesting, I didn't know defeating Kakashi would garner such fame," thought Naruto. Ryu turned his attention back to Mei, who was still discussing with Conan. "Now is your first mission that require your talents. There have been reports of Taki shinobi within the Land of Water. Several of our shinobi have engaged them within the last 2 weeks and there have been casualties, but they always move locations and they have great skill with evading our Oinin, who are the best within the elemental nations. I require you two to go and wipe out the Taki ninja," said Mei. "Anything else?" questioned Conan. "Yes, if you could be able to bring one back alive, that will be appreciated, so we could gain intel for their motives, and there will be extra cash on the side, but that in itself is an optional objective. You just have to kill the rest of them, and also there have been reports of a few Iwa shinobi among them, but they are just rumors at the moment, but sometimes rumors tend to be true," said Mei. Both Akatsuki members left the village. "This will be difficult," said Ryu, gaining Conan's attention. "How so?" asked the blue-haired woman. "The Land of Water is a large collective of islands, and right now we are the largest island. Splitting up is not the most appropriate decision," said Naruto. "So instead of splitting up, we split ourselves." Conan was now confused, and what did he mean? Naruto made a unique cross sign and shouted out the name of a powerful jutsu, his oldest and fondest jutsu. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Immediately 1,000 Ryus were found all around them. Conan, understanding what he meant and getting over her amazement over so many clones, thought the name of her jutsu. Shikigami no Mai. Onin, then her entire body starting unfolding into numerous sheets of paper. They then folded into butterflies and started flying around the Naruto clones. "Have one of your butterflies stay here with me and have one butterfly partnered up with a clone where they will spread out and look for the teams of Taki shinobi," ordered Ryu, which Conan had nothing to complain about since it was an ingenious plan. "When one of the clones finds the campsites, it will disperse and the intel will come back to me, and then we kill the foreign ninja when we meet up again." Each Naruto then activated their invisibility jutsu, and each clone and paper butterfly went on their own way. An hour later, Naruto was meditating in the exact same spot where he created his own army, waiting for one of his clones to disperse. Each of Conan's paper butterflies was sitting on each clone's shoulders, also waiting patiently. Not long passed and Naruto felt the memories of 3 of his copies dispersing. Found the campsites. They on the southwest island from the center one. There are 3 camps, one to the southwest, one to the southeast and one to the north in an evenly spaced triangle. I will take the southwest camp. And you take the southeast. We will meet up at the northern camp when we have dealt with both," said Naruto. Ryu activated his invisibility jutsu and Conan's paper butterflies flew to the southeast. It took a few hours of traveling on Naruto's part. He would have gotten there faster if he had learned the Hiraishin, but it was one difficult jutsu. The mechanics behind it were hard even for a seal master such as Naruto. But what he had studied from the jutsu scrolls is that the Hiraishin was a space-time ninjutsu and fuinjutsu mixed in one. Naruto had yet finished understanding the basics of the jutsu, sharing with us all that the teleportation jutsu was a masterpiece of the shinobi arts. By now Naruto was nearing his assigned campsite. Since the blood transfusion Madara gave him, Naruto was no WA sensor, but he rarely used his abilities and instead sealed it off like the seal the Hyuga clan use on their branch members. Naruto released the seal, keeping his sensor abilities at bay. The seal was located at the nape of his neck. He could now detect 23 chakra signatures in the camp. Some were small while others were fairly large, at least low Jonin level. Deciding to take action, Naruto unsheathed his katana on his back and got ready to kill all the shinobi. He jumped into the middle of the camp and deactivated his invisibility. All the Taki ninjas who were milling about jumped at the sight of the stranger in the black cloak with red clouds. Deciding to make the first move, Naruto threw a kunai that penetrated a Taki nin's head. Instantly all the other shinobi were on guard. They charged all at once on Ryu. But 3 were instantly cut down by Naruto's sword. Seeing their dead comrades on the ground, some took a step back out of fear. At the corner of his eye Naruto saw a shinobi tying what looked like a flare tag to a kunai. Choosing to let the shinobi fire off the flare, Naruto stood there waiting. He didn't care if more came, he needed to wipe out all these shinobi anyway. So a warm-up would be good before the rest arrived. The flare exploded in the sky, alerting any patrols that there was trouble at the camp. Ryu sealed his katana into his right hand and went through some hand seals. The other nin in the camp were waiting for what was to happen next. Futon. Uzumaku Repuakama, wind release, billowing gale scythes, shouted Naruto as 2 scythes made of wind appeared in his outstretched hands. He threw them at the shinobi and the scythes launched away from his hands, traveling and whirling around in a sphere, killing and maiming the shinobi that were unable to duck or get out of the way. The scythes dissipated and now only 7 shinobi were left. Rage fueling them at the sight of their compatriots lying in fleshy chunks on the ground, the ninja charged. At the blonde, forgetting all their caution, now replaced by anger. Naruto unsealed his katana on his right hand and blocked a punch with the flat of the blade, and he then took surprise of his opponent. When he flipped the flat side and replaced it with the blade, he completely tore through his attacker's arm and then decapitated him with a swift flick of his wrist. He sidestepped a kunai slash and performed an uppercut with his katana on the shinobi. His neck had a large slash and it continued on to the base of his skull, where it sliced his head like a butcher shanking a piece of meat. He obed the body in front of him and used it as a shield which blocked incoming kunai as they lodged themselves into the body. He tackled the ninja that threw the kunai with the body he was holding and shoved his katana through the body's chest, and it pierced the ninja's chest, who later died of blood loss. He heard the shout of a jutsu and small fireballs were racing towards him. He channeled chakra in to his katana where a wind aura appeared, and he cut every fireball aimed at him while briskly walking towards the ninja. But he didn't realize that the fireballs were a distraction, where a ninja was attempting to sneak up behind him and stab him in the back. Sensing the approaching ninja behind him, Ryu, in a marvelous show of agility, jumped into the air and performed an upside-down spin, dodging the fire, and while he was doing that, the fireballs were soaring towards the ninja, who was burned by the flames. The ninja that was creating the fireballs stopped what he was doing. Naruto landed on the ground, swiftly sealed his katana and went through some hand seals. Raiden. Raiko Jabaran, lightning release, lightning javelin, shouted Ryu as from his hand a flickering spear of lightning shot towards the ninja where he was stabbed in the right lung. The lightning was numbing his body and he lost control of his right hand. Then Naruto yanked the lightning spear to his right where it created a gruesome wound that appeared as if someone hacked the Taki nin with a chainsaw. Naruto turned around and backhanded another nin who attempted to stab him. Apparently this one didn't learn from his comrade's mistake. The shinobi rolled on the ground before coming to a stop with his face burying the ground, but he wasn't dead. The other ninja went through a multitude of hand seals before finishing his jutsu. Unfortunately for Naruto, the camp was near the ocean where the Taki nin could draw the water from for his next attack. Suiryuden no Jutsu, water release, water dragon bullet, yelled the nin as a huge water dragon appeared from the nearby ocean. It tore through any tree that were blocking its path from Ryu. Ryu, being smart, went through hand seals for a jutsu he was able to copy with his Sharingan when he was in Konoha. Doden. Doryuheiki, earth release, earth citadel wall, yelled Naruto as a wall of earth rose up in front of him. But he noticed it lacked the bulldog heads and it was less chiseled. The water dragon hit the earth wall dead on. But since water was weak against earth, it did little to budge the wall. Naruto unsealed his katana and channeled lightning chalk raw into it, increasing its piercing damage and overall sharpness, but it wasn't as great as the wind chakra's penetration. He chucked his sword in the air and kicked it at the base of the hilt where katana traveled through the earth wall easily and still kept its flight towards the Taki nin, who didn't have enough time to move before his spine was drilled by the lightning sword. The other Taki Nin, who was trying to get up off the ground, tried to run away, but his attempt were futile as he felt himself being hefted into the air, was being held by the unknown assailant at his throat. "Please, I have a family, a child," choked the man as his throat was being squeezed by the man with the red eyes. "Please," begged the man. "I don't have what you have," said Ryu darkly. And with enough Kri's sure crushed the Nin's throat in a second. Naruto dumped the body on the ground and went to retrieve his katana. He approached the shinobi's body and put his foot on the chest as pressure and hefted his sword out of his chest. Cleaned the blade and sheathed it in its holder. Now he was waiting for any patrols that might have been signaled when the kunai flare went off. He heard a voice behind and judging from the sound of it, the voice was definitely male. He turned around to face the voice, and it was Iwa Nin. The Iwa Nin was surveying all the carnage. There were dead bodies everywhere. He looked, and most of them were cut up into meaty chunks. Others were merely stabbed or slashed, but their blood was staining the ground. And in the center of all the desolation was a man wearing a black cloak with red clouds. But when he looked at the man's face, he froze. This guy looked like an exact replica of the Yondaime Hokage, whispered the man. "You're the Yondaime Hokage," said the Iwa Nin as he pointed a finger at Naruto. Naruto's eyes changed into his eternal Mangekyo and a look of rage appeared on his face. The Iwa ninja didn't have time to blink when he found a hand in his chest holding his heart. The Iwa Nin coughed up blood and his body was in pain, and there was a hand holding his heart. "If you're going to kill me, do it already like how you murdered all the other Iwa shinobi that died valiantly," said the Iwa Nin. But Naruto had his bloodthirsty smirk on his face. "Foolish. You believe that I'm the Yondaime Hokage," said Naruto idly. "I'm someone much worse, but how to kill you? Crushing your heart is too cliché. How about this?" Naruto then started channeling wind chakra into the palm of his hand, creating tiny wind blades. The Iwa shinobi started screaming in abject pain. The wind lacerating his heart was the worst feeling imaginable. All the slashes and cuts were too much for the ninja to resist, and he then felt his life slipping away. Within a few seconds the shinobi was dead, and Naruto unceremoniously dropped him on the ground. When Naruto glanced at his hand, it was flooded with blood. He grinned at the red liquid coating his hand. When he GLIMPSED at his handiwork, what he saw was a carved and slashed heart that was bleeding from every opening. Naruto didn't mind killing. He was unaffected by it. He didn't love it nor did he hate it. He was content with it. He sat on the dirty ground and began meditating, waiting for any other Taki or Iwa shinobi. He didn't have to wait long before he heard footsteps encroaching on his position. A large group of Taki nin along with some Iwa nin were now surrounding him. It didn't take a genius to figure out that he was responsible for all the deaths in the camp, and his arm was bloodied, showcasing that he killed someone. And painfully. "Come on, he's just one man, we can take him," yelled a Taki shinobi. "The Yondaime Hokage," yelled a Iwa shinobi. "Let's kill him and avenge our families," yelled another Iwa nin. Naruto got off the ground and dusted off his cloak. "You will never mention that man in front of me again," threatened Naruto, though none of the ninja took his threat seriously. They didn't know that he was right. "And you will never get the chance to." Naruto blazed through some hand seals ending on the dragon seal. Futon. Senha no Kaisei, wind release, formation of 1,000 blades. And instantly a semi-sphere of wind needles surrounded him like a shield. And then the needles launched away from Naruto, impaling every ninja that was near him. Konan had just recently finished off the shinobi in her camp. There was about 20 of them. And halfway during the fight a flare went off in the sky to the west, signaling any others nearby. Realizing that Ryu had something to do with the flare, Konan was relieved that some pressure was taken off her. But now she was standing amidst dead bodies of the Taki ninja. She wondered how Ryu was handling himself against the shinobi, but quickly told herself that there was nothing to worry about. She activated her signature paper jutsu and transformed into butterflies and headed for the northern camp. Ryu was stepping over the corpses that lay on the ground. That last jutsu couldn't be blocked or dodged. Even taking cover behind other things was useless because of the sharp wind blades. Penetrating abilities were so powerful that even earth walls were ineffective. The ninja on the ground didn't have time to scream before their lives left them. And their blood soiled the ground that Naruto was currently stepping on. He stepped on something while walking away. He looked down and noticed a picture of an IWA nin whose body was not far away. It was a picture of the ninja with a woman whose hand was on a bulging belly and they were smiling lovingly. What Naruto noticed is that the smiles were the exact same smiles he and the pink-haired woman had in his dream a few nights ago. He scowled at the image and kept walking to the camp. He had no sympathy for those who were in love. But love was one of the things he craved most in his past life, and maybe he could love someone like that family in the picture, maybe. He was walking for some time while heading to the camp. That warm-up slaughter did him wonders. His body was refreshed and full of energy. He felt energized. He needed to dump a powerful jutsu, and soon. He finally made it to the camp and he sensed Konan not far off. Konan was patiently waiting behind a tree not far off from the northern camp. Luckily there were no sensors, so no one had spotted her. She saw her blonde-haired partner in the corner of her eye. "Since you are here, I'm to believe that your assigned camp has been dealt with," said Konan to Ryu. "It sounds like you doubted me," stated Naruto neutrally. "I did," deadpanned Konan. Ryu's eye twitched. He disliked being doubted. It sounded like an insult to his abilities, or was she toying with him? "And I also assumed that you let the flare go off. I was doing my assigned mission while also having a bit of fun," spoke Ryu with a subtle smirk. "Fun?" inquired Konan. "In battle I have a very bad habit of holding my power back and making the fight more enjoyable for myself. I'm a censor, but I hold that talent back whenever fighting to give my opponents an advantage over me," said Ryu in barely hidden arrogance. "You sound very sure of yourself, and it's best not to allow your arrogance to cloud your mind," bit back Konan. "Not arrogance, confidence," replied Naruto. "If a battle gets boring I become serious and end the fighting before I die of boredom. You sound like a warmonger or battle master to me who enjoys killing just to amuse himself," responded Konan. "If you had been listening you would have heard that I never said that I like killing, just combat itself," corrected Ryu. Konan slightly widened her eyes at Ryu but decided to stop the conversation and focus on their objective. "We still have to deal with the last remnants of the Taki nin," spoke Konan as she stared at the camp. "We should at least try to keep one alive so the mist can interrogate him." "Sure, I can keep one alive. In fact, I already have a jutsu that I wanted to test out," said Ryu with his signature smirk. "Kaden, your Hikakahon fire release, flickering fire whipping tail," yelled Naruto as he spewed streams of fire towards the enemy camp. The fire was coiling around, igniting shinobi and the tents that housed them, and true to its name it seemed like the fire was looping around like tails. Konan could hear the screams emanating from the shinobi. She had witnessed death multiple times even at a young age during the Second Shinobi World War when she and her friends Nagato and Yahiko first met the San. And she experienced a lot more death afterwards. She could see with her eyes that her blonde partner had also seen death with those emotionless eyes of his. "I can sense a few who are still clinging to their wretched lives," spat Ryu. But Konan was able to pick up on the animosity he held, as if he didn't want them to suffer in their lives, but his face quickly fell back into his neutral appearance. "Pick a Taki nin to bring back to the village. I will go on ahead and report to the Mizukage of our mission's success." Ryu then began walking away, back to Kurigakure, leaving Konan, who was watching his back. She could feel sympathetic to him. He obviously had lost a loved one in his life like her. Naruto made it back to Kurigakure. He was rethinking of his dream nightmare involving all the apparitions and the small boy in orange. He experienced the same dream earlier and they were exactly the same, but was he going crazy? Was all the stress from the Eye of the Moon plan getting to him? No. It wasn't a vision. He didn't believe in such things, but why was the boy claiming to be him? Was he talking about his psychological mask? That Naruto never existed, it was a fake. He was now truly himself. But all those visions, they made him melancholy. Why? He knew that those visions would never happen. He would always be hated if it was for being the Kyuubi container or for something out of his control. It wouldn't matter if the village knew he was the Yondaime's son. In his past life, he was a sheep in a world of dogs, but no, he's a wolf. Especially the images with the pink-haired woman and the baby. Their love for such a tiny being. The concept of love to him. Love was an illusion. Nothing could justify love. Could you see love? Could it be used as a weapon? He didn't know the feeling. Ing of love, or at least he thought he knew. Like the Sandaime and Iruka. No, they loved him out of pity. But even now he hoped one day to love someone as they love him, to just give him a chance. Sandaime probably thought he was a bane to his existence, and if his tool broke from all the hatred from the villagers, then his village would lose a valuable weapon. Most villages don't care about their Jinchuriki, so why would he? And Iruka, why would he bond with the thing that murdered his parents? He was one of those people who hated him, with those eyes. But the eyes he would give people would be like windows, both seeing through and nothing at the same time, depending on what was on the other side. His body was on autopilot and he was climbing up a staircase, but he didn't notice the pair of soft mounds collide and smother his face. You know, I was slightly disappointed that you never looked at me when we met in my office, said a sultry voice. But if I knew I needed my greatest assets, then I would have used them on such a handsome man sooner. Naruto looked up from his position between the perky globes to see the gorgeous face of the Mizukage smiling down on him. Recovering quickly, Naruto detached himself from between the Valley of Mazes and took on his emotionless visage. However, if you were to look closely, you could see the stain of pink on his cheeks. Female interaction was not something he was good at. I'm here to report the success of the mission you assigned myself and my partner Mizukage-sama, said Ryu as he was now standing at the same height as Mei. Straight to business, no fun in between. You have to learn to lighten up, Mr. Yokaze, said Mei as she bit her fingernail sexually. Although I could help in that department, said Mei as she whispered in Ryu's ear. Naruto still kept that emotionless face, but held back a shudder at Mei's actions. Now that he fully looked at her, Naruto could say that Mei was one of the most beautiful kunoichi he's met along with Konan and Tsunade, although he would never call Konan beautiful out loud. As entertaining as this is, Mizukage-sama, I believe such things should not be spoken outside private areas. Saw it Ryu politely and yet showing no hint of emotion. Oh, what we're doing now would be far different than what we would do behind closed doors. Mr. Yokaze, said Mei slowly and softly. But her Mizukage position would come before her fun. Mei led Naruto to her office. So how was the success of your mission? Asked Mei in an authoritative voice. Konan and I were able to eliminate any Taki nin within the vicinity. There were 3 camps among their ranks. I took one and Konan took another, where we later converged upon the last one, where we also dealt with them, and Konan should be returning with a hostage. How long will it be until your partner arrives with the hostage? Queried Mei. Unknown, but I believe it will be at least a day before she arrives, answered Naruto. Good, stated Mei. Good, questioned Naruto. Now presents us with a perfect opportunity to get to know each other on a much more personal level, spoke Mei in an enticing voice. How so? Asked Ryu carefully. After everyone had heard what you did in Konoha, especially to Kakashi Hatake, I was amazed that someone as young as you could be so strong, said Mei sultrily. I've wanted to meet you for some time, yet from the rumors spoken about, they never said you were this handsome. It's pleasing to know that such an exquisite specimen of the female gender thinks of me in such a way, said Naruto neutrally. He didn't know how to react to the situation he was in. Living in a cave for years can do that to some people. Mei blushed at Ryu's words. She always liked it when men complimented her. Well, Ryu, maybe we should talk about our business with the Akatsuki and their contract over dinner at possibly my home, suggested Mei sweetly and huskily. Naruto raised his eyebrow at the woman. Naruto couldn't remember much of his interactions with women before his life as Madara's student. All he could remember was a fist coming towards his face. Very well, when would you like to have dinner, Mizukage-sama? Replied Ryu with his face betraying no emotion. Please, call me Mei, and tomorrow sounds good. I will give you the address later, said the Mizukage as she brushed her hand over Naruto's cheek while walking out of her office. Naruto craned his head to watch the busty cage leave as she added some sway in her hips just for his entertainment. Interesting, I had heard that the Mizukage was beautiful and that she is a powerful kunoichi who's worthy of being a cage. Also add on to the fact she has 2 Keki Genkai, quite the opportunity indeed. Who knows how long the capturing of the Bijus will take us. Oh, it's always good to create contingency plans, quite the opportunity indeed, thought Ryu viscously while creating future plans. A few hours later, Konan had returned with a Taki nin smothered in pap. only showing his nose so that he could breathe. The Kiri shinobi brought him to one of their interrogation rooms ready to be interrogated. The room had various tools used for torture and various old blood stains on the walls and floors. In the room was tinted glass where people could observe the interrogation. Behind the glass was Mei, Conan and Ryu. For hours they had been watching. Ingao beat the Taki nin until he told them who and why they hired them. But it was ineffective, so Ao gave up. Nothing I have done has tried Mizukage-sama, he won't talk well, at least not under my strategies, said Ao as he joined the three others in the room. Mei bit her finger lightly, trying to figure out something. Perhaps you should let me handle the interrogation from here, Mizukage-sama, suggested Ryu. Mei was surprised at the suggestion from Ryu, so was Conan and Ao. Can you really help, Ryu-kun? Said Mei. Both Ao and Conan caught on to kun. It will go down in history as the shortest interrogation ever, said Naruto confidently. He walked into the room housing the prisoner and sat down in a chair opposite the shinobi with a table between them. Who are you? Spat the tied-up nin. I'm Ryu Yokaze, said Naruto. The ninja looked at him quizzically, but Naruto caught on to his confused face. You asked me who I was, stated Yokaze. The ninja looked at him for a few more seconds before he chuckled a little. Well, at least you're not using some corny, your worst nightmare line, unlike that other guy with the eye patch. Please, I'm far above any cliché, said Ryu. As Ryu inspected the shinobi in front of him, devising the best possible to torture him. The nin had greasy black hair, pale skin and brown eyes. Just average in appearance. On the other side of the glass, Conan, Ao, and Mei were watching the whole spectacle. Ao was taking notes on how Ryu handled the situation. He had to admit it. Yokaze was cool. Conan was looking at her partner with calculating eyes, wondering what he would do next. But Mei was apprehensive. Her thoughts were bordering on what Ryu was doing. On the other side, Naruto's Sharingan were boring into the nin's head. But the shinobi wasn't intimidated by the crimson eyes. Come, what are you going to do that the other guy didn't? Quipped the Taki shinobi. Ryu combed his hand through his blonde locks and sighed. Do you know what pain is? Asked Naruto. The ninja didn't answer him but just stared at him confused. Pain can mean a lot of things, such as suffering or discomfort brought about by illness or injury, or mental and emotional suffering of the mind caused by stress or great trauma that happens within one's mind and experiences of life. Conan just kept watching, but he was right. Even today she was still in pain of Yahiko's death. And her partner was in pain too. Now I'm going to give you two choices about how I'm going to get the information from you, said Ryu. First option, my way, or second option, my way. The shinobi spat in Naruto's face just below his eye. I'm guessing you want to do it my way, stated Naruto as he wiped the saliva off his cheek with his cloak's sleeve. Naruto channeled chakra to his left eye and his eternal Mangekyo pattern appeared. The scythe-like shuriken and the red pinwheel around the pupil appeared, and Naruto whispered, Tsukuyomi. The Taki nin then found himself trapped within an strange world. The entire landscape changed. There was a red moon shining red light over the world. There were black clouds that dotted the red sky, and there were no mountains or trees. Welcome to the world of Tsukuyomi, said Ryu as he materialized from nowhere. Here you could call me a god, for I control everything within this reality. Then chains burst from the ground and coiled around the nin, restricting his movements. For 3 days I will torture you here without pausing or stopping. The pain will only end when you are willing to give me the information, said Ryu. Then what appeared to be embers formed on the nin's body. Then the embers became flames. The shinobi started screaming out in pain. For hours he screamed while the flames seared his flesh. Naruto just watched. This was one of the training methods Madara used against him if he was ever captured and tortured, and it was hell on the first lesson. 2 hours later, within the illusion, did the shinobi finally say something. I'm not telling you anything, gasped the Taki nin. Naruto sighed. He wasn't sure if it was amazing willpower or stupidity, so he decided to kick things up a notch. The nin, while on fire, then started vomiting water. Right now your lungs are being filled with ice-cold water, said Naruto. Let me tell you an interesting fact about the lungs. If ice-cold water were to reach the inside of your lungs, then it will burn more than fire. The nin was desperately trying to scream, but instead he was choking on water, but he wasn't dying. You just have to nod your head and tell me the information and all this will stop. You have 2 days and 17 hours to go, said Naruto as he kept watching the nin. 3 hours passed and Naruto was getting impatient in a world where he controls time. The nin had yet to break. The blonde assumed that he must have be a high-ranking jonin within his village as that was the only explanation. You forced this on yourself, said Naruto. The chains that holding the shinobi grew hooks on their links. And like a factory line, the chains started moving in an orderly fashion. The hooks that were on the links started stripping the skin of the shinobi, exposing his muscle. Where the flames that were burning him caused even more pain. Pain was all the ninja could feel. He couldn't scream at all the pain that he was feeling because of the water he was choking on, and the burning in his lungs was forcing all the oxygen from his body. He couldn't take it anymore. He had to make the pain stop. Through determination the shinobi nodded his head to Naruto and he found himself back in the real world. He was sweating. He could feel no more agony. And he screamed while tears flew from his eyes at the feeling of it all. He hadn't felt anything so horrifying before. Even to ally he stopped screaming and the tears that fell from his eyes were wetting the table. We, Taki Nin, were hired by the Sandaime Tsuchikage to smuggle weapons and other items into the land of water. And prepare to take some of its land and set up a base. The Sandaime sent Iwa Nin as assurance and we only had a few skirmishes with Kiri Nin, said the shinobi tiredly. Ryu got out of the air and left the room and the Mizukage left with Ao and Konan. Well, Ao went back into the room and started beating the nin again. But Mei was impressed. Did the blonde Akatsuki member use genjutsu to make the nin talk, and if so it was really effective since only a few seconds had passed and he reduced the Taki shinobi into a weeping mess. Naruto was walking along the roads of Kirigakure. Although he had the strange feeling that he was being followed, his suspicions were proven true when two slender arms wrapped around his neck. Thank you for your help with the interrogation, Ryu-kun, said a sultry voice which was familiar to Naruto. He turned his head and he saw the smiling face of Mei hugging him from behind. A thought quickly came to mind. Mei-chan, I need access to your files on the Yondaime Mizukage, said Ryu. Mei was taken back by what Naruto said and she released him from her grasp. Whatever do you need them for? Asked Mei wearily. I'm hunting the person that was controlling the Yondaime, deadpanned Naruto. Why? Asked Mei. Their hunter nin were not able to capture the man, so how could Ryu? He murdered my mother, said Ryu neutrally. Mei gasped at what he said. Naruto didn't mention his father because he had no love for the man. Very well. The reports are near my office and on the same level. Not many people guard the reports, so you can enter if you want, said Mei sadly. Naruto nodded and made his way back to the Mizukage tower. Mei was staring at his retreating form, his Akatsuki cloak moving with the wind. Naruto made it to the report room and closed the door behind him. There was only one light and it was dimly lit. There was dust everywhere he laid his eyes on. The feeling of emptiness the room gave off was chilling. He would have continued on into the room further if it wasn't for the swirling distortion that appeared behind him. What he saw first was an orange mask with a single eyehole, black spiky hair and a Akatsuki cloak. Why hello, greeted the stranger. Naruto's eyes didn't betray any emotion, he just simply stared at the newcomer as if he was a nuisance. Hi, said Ryu. It's nice to finally meet you, Ryu Yokaze. You made quite the reputation when you butchered all those leaf nins and Kakashi during the infiltration of Konoha. That was quite impressive. Ah, but wait, let me introduce myself. I am Madara Uchiha, said the now identified Madara. Naruto smirked his deathly smirk and his eyes widened in surprise. From just observing the space distortion he was able to deduce that it was an advanced space-time teleportation ninjutsu. Madara Uchiha, repeated Naruto with a happy sigh. I take it you've heard of me, said Madara, happily. Yes, I have heard of you. I also met you just recently, said Ryu with his now annoying smirk. Madara narrowed his lone eye at Naruto. What do you mean, met me? Threatened, questioned Madara. No, I've never met you. I've met Madara, not you, so you can drop the charade now. Obito Uchiha, spoke Naruto. The masked man now known as Obito scowled. How do you know that name? Snarled Obito, who had a scowl on his features behind his mask. Does it matter? Queried Naruto. I guess not, said Obito as he took off his mask. Naruto now saw the Uchiha survivor's face. It was horrendously scarred on the right side while it was perfectly fine on the left, and he had 2 Sharingan. Ikononl. Why assume you got that left Sharingan in your eye after the events of the Uchiha massacre? Said Ryu. You're quite astute, complimented Obito. Yes, I was involved with the Uchiha massacre. Can you belly Eve that Itachi alone can wipe out the entire Uchiha police force in a single night? Then you were the accomplice Itachi was with that night, spoke Ryu. He had some questions regarding Obito that needed answering. Quite right. Itachi came to me that night asking for my help in wiping out the clan, but enough about the Uchiha. I can only assume you have questions, said Obito as he scrutinized Ryu. Why, yes, I do have questions, and you being here saves me all the time and trouble of trying to find you, said Naruto. How did you escape all the rocks that crushed your body during your mission to destroy Kanobi Bridge? When I was crushed, I was blind. A boulder obscured my right field of vision and I gave my left eye away to Kakashi, yet I was able to feel the small glimmer of light on my cheek through a crack in the boulders. With a new resolve I attempted to crawl through the dark and step into the light. I was able to move my body well enough in the cramped spaces to reach my kunai holster on my right leg, which was also nearly crushed, and cut off the remaining arm that was pinned to the boulder, and I was able to wrench myself free from the boulder, and I climbed up with the rocks as my platforms and with only one arm and a kunai. Although it took my days to get out and only the few droplets of water that cascaded down the rocks was I able to survive. But how did you get your right arm back? Questioned Naruto with narrowed eyes. When I was free from the boulders I saw a strange pale man with yellow eyes and green hair walking around. I killed him with the kunai in my hand, believing him to be an enemy. However, instead of blood I saw nothing. It wasn't bleeding. So an idea came to my head. I used my basic knowledge of medical ninjutsu, ninja wire and a senbon needle. Did I cut off the mont's arm and sew it onto my own, where it later melded with my body. It seems luck favors you, stated Naruto. Indeed. Why did you never return to Konohagakure? Although I assume why, I want to hear it from you. Obito remained silent and he narrowed his eyes a little. Does it involve Rin Nohara? Obito scowled but made no move towards Ryu. Obito didn't know much of his abilities, so it was best to back down for now. I was returning to Konoha after I had gotten used to my new arm. However, I was able to hear yelling, and even though I'm not a sensor, I old sense numerous chakra signatures chasing 2 others. So I followed the chakra and I was able to see through my left eye, which was in Kakashi's eye socket at the time. I saw him stab his signature jutsu, the Chidori, through Rin's chest where her heart was supposed to be, spat Obito. Naruto looked down at the ground as if contemplating something. The Chidori, huh? Breathed Naruto. The blonde then began to remove his Akatsuki cloak and dropped it to the floor. Obito tensed slightly, expecting an attack, but then Naruto removed his edge-tattered coat, then went his arms, armor, and finally his chest. I know what it feels like. ... Obito then saw a large scar that looked like a lightning bolt hit Ryu's chest and arced outwards where his heart was supposed to be. To be hit by that jutsu. That scar, said Obito as he inspected it. Did Kakashi try to kill you too? Questioned Obito. No, this was done by another, said Ryu. Sasuke Uchiha, quickly putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Obito. You're Naruto Uzumaki. I should give you a prize for figuring it out so quickly, said Naruto as he placed his armor back on his body. I thought you died, stated Obito. Well, Uzumaki are like roaches, you just can't seem to kill us, replied Naruto. I'll remember that, said Obito. I also know about that Kiri mission involving Rin and the Sanbi, stated Naruto, which made Obito widen his eyes in surprise. Now there are 2 possible reasons why Kakashi killed her. One is that he killed her to eliminate the beast inside of her, dispersing its chakra around the world. Or 2, you made Kakashi promise to protect Rin and he would never kill her, so she jumped in the way of his Chidori, so to kill the beast anyway. To be truthful, I find the second option more believable. And you have the ancient power of the Shodaime Hokage that you attained from the DNA of the white Zetsu you killed. Both men locked eyes with each other before Naruto voiced something on his mind. Why did you control the Yondaime Mizukage Yagura? Kiri was responsible for Rin's death, despite that it was Kakashi that made the final blow. it was still their plan in the first place, so I dead to weaken Kiri by manipulating Yagura. To sway the beliefs of the village against those with bloodlines, since I couldn't just kill the ordinary shinobi, and when Fubuki Tsukazan was killed I approached Kisame myself and told him about my plan. However, when the rebels finally killed Yagura, he killed many officials and among other things and fled, where he later joined the Akatsuki, explained Obito. And I can only believe that you used your Madara persona to deceive Nagato. And by the way, how did you meet Nagato? Pressed Naruto. I was traveling within the land of rain and I saw Nagato's Rin Negan from a distance. Of course I had researched dojutsu during my travels as Madara, but when I saw the ripples I used my mask to fool him into believing that I was who I said I was, spoke Obito. But why Madara Uchiha in the first place? Quote, as a young boy growing up in the Uchiha clan was difficult. My parents instilled into my mind that only an Uchiha can defeat an Uchiha, and I tried to be greater than I was, but no matter how hard I worked, I was always the loser, and Kakashi was the prodigy, and my weakness caused the Uchiha clan to shun me even more. One point in my life my father said to me that, because of you, the clan is weaker than what it's supposed to be, and then I read about Madara and his treatment of the clan. He was the head and the most powerful among them, yet he was treated like an outcast even with his godlike power. I started admiring him and compared his position to mine, that no matter how high you can reach within the clan they would betray you in the end. Touching story. However, what are you going to do now? Asked Naruto, narrowing his eyes. Well, I did come here to recruit you to my cause, said Obito with a grin. Cause? Then Naruto started laughing, which in turn caused Obito to scowl. Please, I know what your cause is. You plan on sealing the Biju within the statue to create a weapon, correct? Yes, answered Obito, who was still scowling. Naruto didn't say anything, but he stopped laughing, replaced with his annoying smirk. I'm not going to join you, stated Naruto. Instead, I'm going to stop you and replace your plan with mine. Obito was still scowling while Naruto was still smirking. So what do you plan on doing to me? Killing would be your most popular answer, and you can't do it here. It's not the right place, said Obito as he crossed his arms. Naruto's face fell back into its usual neutral expression. Kill you? No. I'm going to make you my personal toy where I will torture again and again. Oh, but not physical torture. No, I'm talking about the torture that you can't heal from, the mental kind, and when I'm done with you, you'll be nothing more than a broken plaything, discarded and forgotten, and then you will be begging me to die, and the world will remember you as nothing more than a puddle of blood on the ground beneath my heel, said Naruto scornfully. 6 months from now, south of the Fire Temple in the Land of Fire, there is a valley large enough to wage a shinobi war. There we will meet again and face each other in battle, for you threaten my plan and I threaten yours. Very well, there only one will reign as the victor. I will create a weapon that will bring hatred to this world, proclaimed Obito. There is no such thing as peace in this world, only pain, war and hatred. I will create a world that there is no hatred and war. Where there is no winners or losers, where there is no darkness, only light, the perfect world, exclaimed Naruto. In 6 months train and become stronger, and when your eyes are ready, come and face me, said Naruto. Obito disappeared via Kamui and Naruto stood there grinning. And know that it was the student that struck down the fake. Naruto was standing before a mirror in his hotel room preparing for his date with the Mizukage. He was lying if he said he was nervous. He then scowled. He had faced multiple opponents at once without a shred of fear, and yet when he thought about his evening with the Auburn beauty, this anxious feeling swept over him. What he was feeling at the moment, anxiousness, it was to him nauseating. He had no idea how to act on such evenings. His female interaction was not the greatest in the world. He didn't know the correct etiquette or how to give a woman a good time. And there was no point in asking Zetsu Bako. Say the plant man was basically an evil clone in a cliché movie. When he tried to remember what his past self was like when it came to women, all he could see was the same result, a fist. Luckily he had the basic sense to dress up in nice clothes. Currently he was wearing a black business jacket with a white collared shirt, black slacks, nice shoes, a yellow tie that matched his hair, and stylish leather gloves. His usually spiky hair was as it is, the strands framed his face and his ponytail fell between his shoulder blades. He went out of his way to buy a bouquet of plum blossoms Bako. Say he thought it would be nice to buy flowers for a woman since Konan liked flowers. She even had one in her hair which led Naruto to believe that women liked flowers. The flower lady blushed when she saw his face. He checked himself in the mirror again, making sure nothing was wrong or out of place. He then remembered his conversation with Obito and how in 6 months they would battle it out too. The death because Obito threatened his plans, and he also impersonated the real Madara, something which enraged Naruto, and he knew why. Madara himself called Obito a copycat who could never measure up to a name that overweighed his. But Naruto knew better. You didn't claim to be Madara Uchiha without immense power to back it up. Naruto knew that Obito had been emulating Madara even since he saw Rin die, and if so, then Obito is not someone Naruto should take lightly. He needed to train and fast while also develop his jutsu arsenal, and that ability, he had almost mastered it, he just needed more time to develop them more. And a psychological case like Obito's didn't happen to anybody, it only happened to an Uchiha who had lost something they loved and replaced it with hatred. It was the sickness of the Uchiha, also known as the curse of hatred. Naruto also had to find a way to turn Obito's pawns against him, but how was the question? If Naruto had Koto Amatsukami of Shisui UC, he has Mangekyo, then coercing them to his side would be easy. He had hoped to get Konan on his side, but other matters were taking his attention away. But right now Naruto had to focus on his date with the Mizukage. When he thought of the auburn-haired wonder, he had a shaking feeling in his hand. He knew it wasn't fear, so what was it? Konan had told him earlier that the missions in the Land of Water were not over. So he assumed he had another mission after his date. Naruto sighed. He wouldn't turn off his Sharingan for the date because he didn't wish to see what his eyes were like behind the red. Were they pitch black and empty like Madara's, or were they the ocean blue of his original pair shining with color? He didn't know which one, black or blue, and he didn't want to find out. Flashback. Naruto had just recently acquired the Eternal Mangekyo from his teacher Madara. Normally rehabilitation was needed to allow the body to become adjusted to the eyes, but because of Naruto's incredible healing abilities he didn't need to wait that long to use his new eyes. He was now training his wind affinity with 1,000 clones alongside him, trying to cut the leaves between their palms. It was tasking, but Naruto knew that it was all worth it in the end. Each day he would focus on one of his 3 affinities, and today was wind and tomorrow would be lightning followed by fire. Then something struck Naruto that he had thought about recently. The eyes in his sockets, who did they belong to originally? The original stopped what he was doing and walked up to the root-like throne that Madara was sitting on. The ancient Uchiha looked up when he sensed his apprentice standing before Sharingan, eyes peering into his soul. "Do you require something of need, my young student?" wheezed Madara. Madara was really the decrepit old man Naruto thought he would be. "These eyes, who did they belong to?" asked Naruto in his emotionless voice. Madara raised his eyebrow at the blonde, but he was curious. And his clones were training, so it wouldn't hurt to tell him. "Those are my eyes," spoke Madara. Naruto had a confused expression. "You said that you gave your eyes to another, so whose are these?" asked Naruto again. "Those are my eyes. The ones that I transplanted into Nagato were originally my brother's, Izuna. The ones that are in your sockets were mine before Izuna forced me to take his," uttered Madara. "But I thought you went blind before Izuna gave you his eyes?" questioned Naruto. "I never went blind. That was just a rumor within the clan after the village was created, and many Uchiha shunned believing that I was a warmonger intent on renewing our battles with the Senju," continued Madara. Madara gripped his scythe tightly in anger. They called him the person that stole his brother's eyes. Tobirama, the future Nadaime Hokage, was distrustful of the Uchiha, mainly of me. I was able to listen in on a conversation between Hashirama and Tobirama about the standing of the Uchiha within the village. Hashirama at the time wanted me to become the Hokage and lead the village as a symbol, and also proving to the village that I was not what the people believed I was. This news made Naruto gasp. The Shodaime actually wanted Madara to be Hokage. However, because the village was a democracy at the time, the people chose to make Hashirama the Hokage, and when Tobirama became Hokage, he created the military police force and gave it the Uchiha clan as a sign of faith and trust. But In actuality this was a way to focus any of the Uchiha's bitterness towards the Senju and focus it in a positive way, but the police were only a temporary solution where my fellow clan members believed that the villagers and the Hokage were ostracizing the Uchiha and taking away any power that the clan had over the village. Spoke Madara as he talked about his history in the Uchiha clan. Interesting, but you must have been forced to use the Mangekyo, so therefore you had suffered damage to your eyes, said Naruto neutrally. Yes, and the eyes in your sockets aren't damaged because of the eternal Mangekyo, informed Madara. Naruto raised his eyebrow in curiosity. When someone transplants the eyes of someone closely related to a Mangekyo user into another Mangekyo user, you create the eternal and any damage to the eyes is repaired, explained Madara. Wait, you said closely related eyes can grow into you the eternal, so how can I use the eternal when I'm not even related to you? Queried Naruto emotionlessly. You have the eternal because of the blood transfusion I gave you, and maybe the Kyuubi's healing factor helped a little. You can access the eternal because in a way, you are now related to me thanks to my blood running throughout your body, clarified Madara. Naruto nodded his head in understanding. Madara then started having another coughing fit, which was a common sight for the blonde. Get back to your training, ordered Madara hoarsely. Naruto did as commanded and went back to Hai's clones who were trying to cut the leaves in their palms. Flashback end. Naruto was still thinking over his eyes. His regenerative abilities could have allowed Naruto's natural eye color to return her than having coal black like Madara's. He then decided that it wasn't important, his eyes were powerful and nothing could change that. The blonde was about to leave for his date when Zetsu materialized right before him. Naruto was secretly pleased that Konan was off doing her own thing, so now he could talk to Zetsu in private. What is it, Zetsu? Sighed Naruto. The Sharingan wielder had just noticed that Zetsu was carrying 2 brown packages wrapped in twine. Naruto subconsciously raised his right eyebrow at the plant man. I have gifts for you, said the white half merrily. The black half groaned at his other's half's behavior. Why did you buy me gifts? Hissed Naruto, getting slightly angry. White Zetsu usually brought him crappy items such as smelly cheese and old socks, the Uzumaki. I was unsure if Zetsu was being serious or liked joking around with Naruto, which later the blonde would threaten to kill Zetsu if he didn't stop being an idiot and kept on buying him shitty presents. Zetsu handed Naruto the first package and Naruto put down the flowers he was holding and unwrapped the package. Naruto unwrapped the package and was met with a box. Opening the box, Naruto saw and beheld a Tonto. Perfectly crafted and well-created Tonto. Naruto was taken back by the weapon in the box. His version of surprise was merely a raised eyebrow. He took the Tonto out of his hand and inspected the sheath that was connected to the blade. The sheath was a royal red in color and had black cherry blossoms that dotted the sheath. Naruto grabbed the hilt of the short blade and noted that it lacked a guard like his katana, and also had a long light blue 11.5-inch rope on the end of the hilt. Naruto unsheathed the blade and held it in his right hand. The blade was silvery blue and the GHT seemed to shine off it like a mirror, like his own katana. Naruto's lips twitched for half a second. This was the best gift that wasn't a piece of crap that he could get from Zetsu. However, Zetsu didn't see the twitching of Naruto's lips. Naruto sheathed the Tonto and tucked into his jacket's inner pocket. Why would you get me this gift, Zetsu? Asked Naruto strangely. Zetsu smirked at his master. It's your first date, and I believed it was a special occasion, said Zetsu honestly. Technically, White Zetsu wanted to give Naruto a signed copy of Ika Ika Paradise, but Black Zetsu said He was trash and Naruto would actually kill him if they were to get it. Zetsu handed the second package to Naruto. Like before, Naruto unwrapped it, but this time it wasn't a weapon. It was a mask. The mask looked like what could be best described as a menacing skull. It was white on the right side of the mask and had 10 red stripes on the left side, almost completely covering the left side of the mask. It also had sharp teeth and a pointed chin with narrow eye holes. Naruto narrowed his eyes in suspicion. He didn't know how to feel. He had to admit that the mask was elegantly designed, but why a mask in the first place? It felt like he was copying Obito, someone he hoped to kill. Why would you get me this, Zetsu? Questioned Naruto neutrally. The blonde didn't know how to feel. He liked the mask, but the purpose of it was clouded. Black Zetsu decided to answer. After your recent escapades in Konoha, if it wasn't for your hood obscuring your enemies' views of your face, they would have discovered your identity, or they would think you were the resurrected Yondaime. That mask is infused with chakra, so even for someone with the Byakugan they will be unable to see your face. From all the chakra obscuring their vision, explained Zetsu. Naruto was surprised that the mask would perfectly hide his identity. Understand, Zetsu, I will only wear this when around Konoha shinobi or anybody associated with Konoha. Even though they believe Naruto Uzumaki is dead, the fact that they can't learn my plans or who I am until the plan commences and the infinite Tsukuyomi is launched. Zetsu nodded at Naruto's words. Naruto rolled up his jacket's left sleeve, revealing sealing tattoos on his wrists. He sealed the mask into the tattoo and rolled down the sleeve. Naruto picked up Hi's bouquet of plum blossoms and left the hotel room he was staying in ready for his dinner with the Mizukage. In the land of Earth, specifically Iwagakure, Ryotenbun no Onoki of both scales, the third Tsuchikage, was fuming with rage. His operation to weaken the land of water and Kurigakure had failed. He knew he shouldn't have hired those tacky nins. Trusting a weaker shinobi village was incredibly stupid. No wonder they were weaker than the 5 great nations. The operation had taken months of planning and preparation. He even sent some of his best jonins to make sure nothing jeopardized the plan. But instead, with all of his forces slaughtered and the mission resulted in failure, now Kiri had all those weapons and supplies along with all the funds they happened to have with them to establish a base camp and hire workers. And something infuriated him further. Kiri returned all of their corpses that were mostly intact, and now his medical officers were going over autopsies of the corpses. He needed to find out who was responsible for all the saddened families in Iwagakure that had lost their loved ones in the land of water. Then one of his assistants walked through the door with news on the bodies. Tsuchikage-sama, we have just recently finished the autopsy on the Iwa shinobis stationed within the land of water, although what we have found was nothing really urgent. One body has shocked the medical officers and it requires your eyes, said the assistant. Very well. Go and tell the medics that I will be arriving at the hospital shortly. Onoki then rubbed his back eye. An annoyance, he really was an old geezer according to Kuretsuchi. When Onoki made it to the hospital, he was greeted to the sight of his 2 medics standing over the body of one of his most trusted Iwa shinobi. He noticed that his shinobi had a gaping hole in his chest and someone had broken through his ribcage. Thank you for coming, Tsuchikage-sama, said one of the medics, and Onoki nodded at the medic. Cause of death? Asked the old cage. That's the most gruesome thing about this body, sir, said the other medic. Onoki raised his eyebrow and his mouth dropped a bit. Cause of death? Number. Aus lacerations to the heart which lead to blood loss and later death, informed the medics. Onoki sighed. This really wasn't his kind of day. And yet there's more, Tsuchikage-sama. The medics lit up a light above the body and positioned it over the hole in the shinobi's chest. Onoki used his flying jutsu to get a better look. He noticed that the medics had removed the heart, but there was something else in the chest. In big bold letters Onoki could make out a few words written on one of the ribs. Onoki's face puffed and went red in anger. He stormed out of the hospital, leaving 2 very startled medics behind. The inscription on the rib was plain as day, as even a child could read it. With regards, from Ryu Yokeis, was all it said. Naruto must have apparently written that with wind chakra. When he was crushing the shinobi's heart, that poor shinobi. Naruto was making his way to the Terumi mansion where he would meet the Mizukage for his date. However, the date was not the thing that was preoccupying his mind. He had another night terror. It was different and yet similar to the one he had a few nights ago. But he brushed off the thoughts from his mind. However, he was nervous. This would be the first time he would truly interact with a female who wasn't Konan. He then remembered one of the lessons Madara told him. Flashback. Naruto was currently training with his new katana that Zetsu had got him when he told his teacher that he was interested in Kenjutsu. Currently Naruto was 14 and his body was quite lean and rippled with muscle. The blonde was now testing his skills against multiple Zetsus and his own Kage Bunshins. Madara was just watching with a calculating eye. He was currently going over what else he should teach Naruto. The blonde had already finished element Al manipulation and shape transformation. So what now? Then it came to him. There will be times when Naruto would have to interact with the females of his species. Naruto, croaked Madara. Naruto stopped what he was doing and walked up to his sensei. What is it, old goat? Said Naruto emotionlessly. A tick mark appeared on Madara's forehead. He couldn't get his student to stop calling him that disrespectful nickname. But back to the reason Madara called Naruto over. Naruto, there will come a time when you will be subjected to the advances of women when you leave the hovel, said Madara. Naruto raised his eyebrow. Since, in Zetsu's opinion, you are handsome and attractive, many kunoichi will use their sexuality to seduce and maybe assassinate you. I have known many Uchiha who have died having their throats slit in their sleep by kunoichi spies, so make kage bunshin and study all you can on resisting the temptation of the kunoichi. But sensei, it might be impossible to fully control my perverted urges, muttered Naruto. While it is true that you can't fully control it, you can train yourself to resist it, said Madara. This conversation is becoming really awkward, old goat, spoke Naruto cautiously. Madara sighed at his student, and he can't fault him, it was awkward for him as well. Zetsu, yelled Madara, and a few seconds later the plant appeared. Gather books on women and how to stave off the seduction of kunoichi, said Madara awkwardly. Naruto sighed. The old goat was right, this would be extremely awkward. Flashback end. Naruto then found himself standing before the Terumi mansion. It was an extravagant Japanese mansion that had blue blossoms on the roof. Guarding the mansion was a tall wall that was sure to be guarded by Anbu and a double door blocking the person from entering. Naruto walked through the double door, believing Mei had already told her Anbu that his presence was expected within the mansion's grounds. Not far away, a team of Anbu watching Naruto enter the Mizukage's mansion. This is Duck to Lobster. Target. Dragon has entered the mansion. Over, said the Anbu agent. Duck, who wore a duck mask. Copy Duck. This is Frog. Confirm status on the target. Water Maiden. Over, said Frog, who wore a frog mask. Frog. Duck, this is Lobster. Status on target. Water Maiden is currently, but before Lobster could finish his update, he was propelled backwards by a giant perverted nosebleed. Behind his mask was currently a perverted grin and some drool on his left lip. Lobster. Come in, Lobster. Should we have a man down? Man down, yelled Duck. Going in to assist Lobster. Over, shouted Duck into his communication device. No, we must complete our mission, no matter the cost. Over, said Frog in a cliched overdramatic voice. Too late, I'm at Lobster's position. Over, said Duck over the radio. Fine, confirm status on Water Maiden. Over, but Frog's message didn't get through to Duck. You know, this is a nice view of. But Duck was also launched back by a perverted nosebleed where he landed next to Lobster, where he also sported a perverted grin. Duck. Come in, Duck. Douche. Damn it, we've lost another one. Going over to Duck's and Lobster's last position, yelled Frog to no one since there was only 3 of them. When he made it over to the down Anbu agents, he knew they needed to get to the hospital to replace all their lost blood. But before he did that, he retraced the 2 blood trails left behind by the Anbu agents. But what he saw when he made it to the beginning of the trail also gave him a nose bleed, where he flew even farther than his 2 fellow operatives. The cause of their nosebleeds. Mei Terumi was currently standing before a mirror, naked, trying to decide on which dress she would wear for her date with Ryu. She was nervous and anxious. She had never been on a romantic date in a long time, and usually they were a disaster, because either the man she was with would get a perverted nosebleed and be taken to the hospital, or she would make an idiot of herself by somehow blowing up their food or any other thing that was around her at the time. She decided to take Ryu out for dinner. Because she can't cook, whenever she tried she would somehow burn the water, her oven would combust, her food that was in the refrigerator would freeze solid and would be inedible, and any food she was able to successfully create turned out to be inedible and gave whoever ate the food poisoning. She couldn't decide on a certain dress. There was an sapphire blue dress, her favorite color, one strap with a flower on the strap and a cut down the right side showing off some leg which were smooth and firm. And emerald green dress that matched her eyes, which was strapless and flowing but lacked the cut down the leg. Ultimately deciding on the blue dress, she had just noticed that she lacked any decency so quickly. Doing that, she put on a pair of black laced panties, and then she put and her dress that hugged her figure nicely and pushed her S together, making them even more perky. She heard a knock at her door, which her heart jumped in her chest at the surprise sound. She smoothed out her dress ready to meet Ryu. She opened her door and blushed at what she saw. Ryu was standing there in an extremely nice suit with a yellow tie and black gloves. He was holding a bouquet of plum bee blossoms, and he still had his Sharingan active. Breaking herself from her stupor, Mei started a conversation. "You clean up nicely, Ryu-kun, quite handsome," complimented Mei. Naruto turned his crimson yes upon her, and he tried his hardest to ward off the desire coursing through him, and he remembered Madara's lessons well, but this woman was making him disregard all those lessons and was slowly breaking his will with the sexy dress she had. And he could smell her perfume. She smelled like the ocean. Catching up with reality, Ryu handed the flowers to Mei and both went on their way to the restaurant Mei had made reservations with. Onoki had a headache. Why? Because most of his top jonin were killed by the Kuro Ryu Black Dragon, the man that had made a mockery of the Leaf Village. If it was NT for the circumstances right now, he would love nothing more than to laugh at Konoha. Onoki believed that Yokkai's was nothing more than a brat who gets involved with business not his own, and his Ing fame and his exploits were already traveling to the rest of the nations. When Kumo hears of Iwa's failure, it will be a blow to their pride and power. His assistant walked in carrying a stack of paperwork. "Yuzu," said Onoki to his assistant. "Yes, Tsuchikage-sama," said Yuzu. "Put a new page in the bingo book for Ryu Yokkai's and all information that Konoha and Iwa have on the man," commanded Onoki. The Tsuchikage's assistant nodded and left to fill in a new page in the bingo book. Onoki sighed. He would now have to tell the victims' families about their deaths at the hand of the Yokkai's no Ryu, Dragon of the Night Wind. At Myobokuzen, the elder Toad Sage was in deep thought. He wanted to tell Jiraiya that Naruto was alive and traveling the world. But he also didn't want to tell Jiraiya had Naruto was the one with eyes like the abyss, for it may change the prophecy he saw in his vision 2 years ago. "Lord Elder," said a voice. The old toad opened his eyes and saw Fukasaku hopping up to him. "Lord Elder, should we tell Jiraiya-chan that Naruto is alive and that he is connected to the prophecy you saw 2 years ago?" said Fukasaku. The elder sighed. For 2 years he had kept Naruto's current status only among the other 2 Myobokuzen sages. "That's the problem, Fukasaku. I cannot decide whether to tell Jiraiya about Naruto. I have already lied to him once when I said that I didn't know who the person that would control the great beast was. I don't wish to lie to him again, and news like this would most likely cause him great rage or sorrow. Rage because we withheld the information of his godson being alive, or sorrow knowing that Naruto has not returned to his home and refuses to return," said the toad tiredly. "But something is happening to Naruto. I saw it in another vision of mine. He is haunted by dreams and nightmares of his past and future self," said the elder Toad Sage. "What are you talking about, honorable elder?" asked Fukasaku. "There are 2 paths that are available to the Maelstrom. One path is where he returns to Konoha and lives out his life in happiness. The other path is much different, where he will continue walking the path but never truly stopping, not until he completes what he originally set out to do. However, right now he is trying to discover who he is, although which path he takes is unknown at this time," said the sage. "We will not tell Jiraiya. Naruto's status and goal is something he must discover on his own," said the sage, and Fukasaku bowed his head in uneasy agreement. Speaking of Jiraiya, he was currently king on a road within the Land of Fire. Along with him was Konohamaru Sarutobi, the late Sandaime Hokage's grandson. Konohamaru was like a clone of Naruto, personality-wise. He was loud and boisterous and was quite hyper. And he called Jiraiya Ero-sensei instead of Ero-sennin that Naruto used to call him. The Toad Sage was still grieving over the loss of his godson, the only family he had left, and he had failed also. He was never there for Naruto when he was growing up. Not until he became a genin did he meet him for the first time. But he had also failed Minato and Kushina. The least he could Avenue done is visit the blonde from time to time. But he didn't. He was too busy peeking on women and writing his perverted books. Konohamaru was walking alongside his new sensei, and the Toad Sennin was surprisingly a better teacher than Ebisu. The young Sarutobi was now 11, and according to Jiraiya his power was comparable to that of a mid to high level genin. The young boy was now currently Austin reading Konoha's latest bingo book, but there was one entry that seemed to catch his eye. Ryu Yokeis, whispered Konohamaru. History-wise there wasn't much on the guy, it's as if he fell out of the sky. Like a stranger in a strange land. He then scrutinized the Mon's picture. You couldn't see his face much because it was covered by a hood, but you were able to make out a lower jaw and some hair. He noted that the hair was golden blonde like his. There were a few shinobi who also had Naruto's hair color or similar hair, such as Deidara, Mado Banba, the Mad Bomber. Hey Ero-sensei, who's Ryu Yokeis? Asked Konohamaru with a curious pout. Jiraiya looked to his side to see Konohamaru reading a bingo book, and he was looking at the page of the Kuro Ryu. I don't know, kid, ever. Why, thing about the Yokeis no Ryu, Dragon of the Night Wind, is a mystery. I have heard rumors among my contacts saying that Yokeis has joined the Akatsuki, spoke Jiraiya. Really? Asked an amazed Konohamaru. It's just a rumor at the moment, but still, should you ever cross paths with Yokeis without me, run, said Jiraiya cautiously. Come on, we can take him. Naruto, Nissan would never run from a fight. When the Sarutobi spoke, that name, a flash of guilt appeared on Jiraiya's face. Kid, this guy was able to infiltrate one of the most well-guarded villages in the shinobi world, and he was able to kill at least a dozen Anbu and critically injure Kakashi at the same time, and he disappeared as if he never existed. So tell me when someone like you, who isn't even a genin, let alone not even a jonin in power, could take on an S-ranked criminal such as Ryu Yokeis, berated Jiraiya. Konohamaru pouted in annoyance because what his sensei was saying happened to be true. For half an hour Jiraiya and Konohamaru continued to walk on the road. But Konohamaru decided to voice something that had been bothering him for years. Why was Naruto Nissan hated? Everywhere we walked, there were people who would openly glare at him and say terrible things as well, asked Konohamaru out of the blue. Jiraiya sighed. There was no point in keeping Naruto's Jinchuriki status a secret. Tsunade was planning on telling the village soon. Mainly the younger generation, and about time too. As you know, Konohamaru, the most powerful of the Biju, the Kyuubi no Yoko, attacked the village 15 years ago. They say in the academy that the Yondaime killed it, but that's not true. To kill a Biju is impossible. They are built up masses of chakra, and if you did kill one, their chakra would just disperse and reform later. Since the Yondaime couldn't kill the Kyuubi, he instead did the next best thing. Seal it into a person, preferable a newborn baby, explained Jiraiya, looking down on the ground. Konohamaru widened his eyes in surprise, quickly figuring out that Naruto was the baby that the Yondaime sealed the Kyuubi into as a vessel. But why would the Yondaime seal the Kyuubi into Naruto? Was it because he was an orphan? Questioned Konohamaru. Jiraiya frowned at the question. After the people in the village had calmed down about Naruto's death, Tsunade would reveal his full heritage to everyone. The Yondaime was far too noble a person to ask someone to give up their child, so instead he sealed the fox into his own son. Konohamaru stopped his trek and stared at Jiraiya, who had also stopped walking, with a gaping jaw which had hit the floor. Quickly getting over his stupor, Konohamaru asked, "What? But Ero-sensei, if Naruto was the son of the Yondaime, why did everyone in the village treat him like crap when his father was a hero?" yelled Konohamaru. Jiraiya frowned even more when he heard the Sarutobi's comment. During the Third War, Minato was the one that basically spared SF. Ram's slaughter from Iwa, and they were among his greatest enemies. After his death, if Iwa or Kumo were to find out that Minato had a son, then they would have stopped at nothing to kill Naruto in revenge. So your grandfather gave him his mother's last name to fool everyone in the village and others, and it worked perfectly. And also I was Naruto's godfather, said Jiraiya guiltily, but he didn't register the foot that was aimed at his family jewels until they hit their mark. Jiraiya was on the ground clutching his balls. That kick was harder than he thought. Why were you never there for him? Screamed Konohamaru. Jiraiya picked himself off the ground and looked Konohamaru straight in the eye. After the Kyuubi attacked, I had to reconnect with my spy network. I had to know if the other nations would attack the village. Thankfully they still believed that Konoha was strong, and with our alliance with Suna it made them hesitant to attack. Because of my work I was unable to meet Naruto or even see him. And I know that's another failure I can add onto the list, said Jiraiya sadly. Does he have any other family? Asked Konohamaru. Jiraiya thought about the question and the answer came to him. Only one. Spoke Jiraiya. And with that said, both teacher and student kept walking onwards. Naruto was walking through Kiri with Mei latched to his left arm with her right and holding the bouquet in her left. This was a new experience for him, for he had never been on a date before. Currently he was chanting, "Stupid," within his mind. He knew this was a bad idea, but how could he reject the Mizukage? Within a few minutes the duo found themselves at their reserved restaurant. The stars in the mist, the best Kiri had to offer in fine dining and comfortability. A waiter working at the restaurant guided them to their tables. They ordered wine and their food. Naruto ordered a bowl of miso ramen with a side of red bean soup, while Mei was having a bowl of donburi. So Ryu-kun, I have been meaning to ask, who was it that trained you in shinobi arts? Because I'm doubtful that you would have become a S-ranked shinobi without some help, said Mei with a smile. Ryu stared at her with his emotionless gaze, deciding that refusing would be rude and she would only pester him more for the information if he did. I was trained for 2 years of my life by someone important to me. He taught me everything I knew about being a shinobi, and he was the only person that ever really acknowledged me, said Naruto blankly. Mei's smile dropped a bit, but it was still there. The number of people who actually smiled at me for who I was can be counted on my hand, and he was among the few. You still didn't answer me question, said Mei as she bit her fingernail. Who trained you to be a shinobi? Mei asked again. Naruto looked down into his ramen bowl and found his answer. My father. Flashback. Naruto was currently training in taijutsu, trying to perfect the style that Madara had taught him. The blonde Uzumaki was using wooden training dummies that would move around at irregular intervals like a factory line. The dummies were made by the White Zetsu's clones with their wood release. Also add on to the fact that the wood had revolving arm and leg extensions, forcing Naruto to block some of the blows whenever he would hit one. The purpose of this training? To break the logs with his bare fists and to adapt to situations where he would face more than one opponent. He hit a wooden target with the back end of his fist, utterly shattering the wood. He jabbed another, ending in the same result. However, among the targets were White Zetsu, who were holding kunais. The clones were trying to remain hidden so to catch the blonde off guard while he was dealing with the moving wooden targets. Madara knew that target dummies could only do so much. They could hit you, but could they hit you back? Naruto did a roundhouse kick that shattered yet another log. One of the Zetsu lunged at him with a kunai, but Naruto did a spinning tornado that impacted against the clone's jaw, effectively breaking its jaw and broke its neck at the same time from the force of the impact. Before the Zetsu could hit the ground, Naruto took its kunai and stabbed another in the mouth on the blonde's side, killing it instantly. He took out the kunai and threw it at another Zetsu, where the knife flew past the wood dummies with accurate precision and drived into the eye of the Zetsu, also killing it. Naruto went back to shattering the dummies with his fists and feet. As he was destroying his targets, he took note of the number of Zetsu hiding within the moving targets. His Sharingan could count at least 27. Naruto performed a two-fisted punch against a target, breaking the target into splinters and didn't have much time to narrowly duck a sword swing from a Zetsu. Naruto steadied himself and with his Sharingan scanned his targets and enemies. The Zetsu attacked again with a downward slash. Naruto was able to catch the blade in between his palms and in a swift motion disarmed the Zetsu by breaking its arm and smashing his foot against its chest, and slashed the clone with the katana. Naruto dropped the bladed weapon on the ground and broke another target with his elbow. Naruto slammed his foot against another target, fracturing it, and finally finished off with another tornado kick that destroyed the target. One Zetsu came up behind Naruto intending to cut him with his kunai. Naruto easily sidestepped the slash, but he received a shallow cut on his cheek which bled a little. Without showing emotion, Naruto viscously caught the Zetsu's arm, put him into an armlock, and with some effort slammed the clone's face into the concrete-like ground where spiderweb-like cracks appeared. Kane. Owing that Zetsu wasn't dead, Naruto picked up the clone of the first Hokage and started demolishing the moving wooden targets with the Zetsu's face. If the clone's face wasn't already messed by being mashed into the ground, the result from being used a human weapon was different. The clone had lost most of its teeth and its nose was disfigured, and if Zetsu had any blood it would be bleeding also. There were large splinters and fracture of wood embedded deeply into the Zetsu's face. Naruto, after seeing that the Zetsu was still alive, dropped it on the ground and broke its neck with his foot. D then went back to destroying the wooden dummies that he was skillfully dodging the entire time. One person was watching the brutality that the Uzumaki heir was reaping with a satisfied smirk. And that was the man that breathed life into him. Madara Uchiha was watching his apprentice demolishing everything in his path with ease and precision. This was a training method was designed by the old Uchiha to improve Naruto's dexterity and the force and power of his taijutsu. However, Madara was able to note that he could see some flaws with Naruto's taijutsu. He pivoted his punches too much and his stances were too rigid, which allowed him to become unbalanced and easy for an enemy to exploit to their advantage. Your stances are too rigid, you have to let them flow like water, barked Madara hoarsely. Naruto didn't seem to register what he said, but Madara knew that he heard him. He lived with the boy, sharing the dark hovel they were in for a year, and Madara could tell when Naruto was listening or not. But Madara also noted how brutal Naruto could be in combat, such as when he used the Zetsu's face as an improvised weapon while it was still attached to the body, and using the kunai to stab the Zetsu in the mouth and piercing another one in the eye. The Uchiha knew that Naruto didn't like nor disliked killing, he was content with it. But sometimes when Naruto was training with the Zetsu, Madara could glimpse a small smirk of joy, but it was a sickly smirk that someone took pleasure from inflicting pain. Naruto was currently enjoying himself inflicting harm on the Zetsus, whether by breaking their bones, using sharp wood pieces and gutting them with it, or just by simply watching fall the ground. But he was happy because whenever he would see a Zetsu, he would picture the face of someone in Konoha who had mistreated him. He saw various faces of his former friends and some people who he used to consider his family. But when the face of the Yondaime appeared, he lost all sense and ruthlessly slaughtered the Zetsu and kept breaking the targets even more. A moving, thick, wooden target was nearing him, but the image of his father was standing there smiling kindly at him popped up. And that sparked something within Naruto, something dark. He had his right fist back and crushed the wooden dummy from the impact of his punch. However, he overexerted the amount of power he put into the punch intended for the target, that his arm broke in 3 places, 2 on his forearm and 1 in his humerus bone. He fell to his knees in pain while he was cradling his right arm. His breath was high, and there were beads of sweat rolling of his brow. Madara, seeing that his apprentice was wounded and hurt, got up off his root-like throne and hurried over to his disciple as fast as his withered legs could carry him. When he made it over to his student, he stopped the training and ordered the Zetsus to get bandages and splints. Madara brought Naruto over to Naruto's bed, and laid him down. Madara knew limited medical ninjutsu and he knew how to perform surgical procedures, given how he transplanted his brother's eyes into another. A few white Zetsus returned with bandages and splints. Madara checked over the places that were broken. One was near the wrist, the other near the elbow, and the one located on the humerus was directly in the middle. All the while Naruto was grimacing in agony. He gritted his teeth and tightened his left fist, since he couldn't move his right hand or arm. Madara glanced at his student, and when the boy showed signs of his pain, a wretched feeling would wash over Madara. He hadn't felt that feeling in a long time, not since Izuna. Madara knew that Naruto's healing factor would greatly reduce the amount of time the recuperation would require, but given the extent of the injuries it would take some time to heal. Madara wrapped the splints around the broken areas and bandaged them up. You have to be more careful, watch how much power you exert in your punches and kicks. If you keep doing that, you just end up in this scenario, said Madara. But Naruto's hair overshadowed his eyes. Madara gazed at Naruto again, while he was tying a sling around his right arm. Madara could feel that something was bothering Naruto. He could see some stray tears that were prickling at the corner of his eyes but refused to fall. Madara then figured out what was wrong. Anger leads to sorrow. Madara was entirely aware of what happened to Naruto before the boy became his student. He was treated as if he didn't exist, like he was a nobody, so vessels to the beasts were at least hated but the existence acknowledged. But Naruto was a person who wasn't even there, and people would look through him and nod at him, like an apparition. Such anger built up over time was like holding back an explosion. It would come out at some point. Let it out, whispered the Uchiha. Naruto looked up at his sensei, and ever since knowing the old goat, Naruto knew that he would never say such a thing or act so. Old man understood him perfectly, and he understood what he was feeling right now. The tears that were being held back by the wall that was eyelids flew out like a waterfall. So Naruto cried, letting out all his anguish and misery that the villagers inflicted on him. No other vessel, a jailer to a beast, was treated like he was. He leaned forward and rested his face on the old man's shoulder. But surprisingly, Madara didn't push him away. Instead, he embraced him in a hug, the most genuine hug the blonde Sharingan wielder had experienced. So, how Naruto could feel love within this hug coming from such a hateful person. I guess it gave him a new perspective. That even the most hateful person has some shred of love in their being. Madara stared down at the mop of blonde hair. He remembered a time when Izuna was faced with something similar after the deaths of his other brothers. Madara became a father figure to Izuna rather than brought her because their own father was too busy with the missions the Uchiha received, and he promised long ago that he would protect Izuna from anything. However, he failed and Izuna died. He broke his promise. But now when he looked at Naruto, he would see the face of his beloved brother. Then he discovered what that feeling towards Naruto is fatherly love. Madara didn't deny that he cared for Naruto on some level. The boy grew on you. I wonder if this is what it feels like to have a son. I never had any children, so I don't know what it's like to be a father, so this is quite the new but happy experience. You know I will not be with you forever, and if so I will protect you until I pass, like my brother. Naruto promised Madara silently as he tightened his embrace on Naruto. He was going to make the Uzumaki as strong as possible within the limited amount of time they had. This strange feeling, this love, he hadn't felt it since Izuna nor for any other person. While Madara was thinking that, our favorite blonde was thinking something else. Is this what it feels like to have a father, and it feels warm? Lamented Naruto. Despite how Madara and him would argue about which dish of ramen is better than the other, or the color orange is or isn't a stupid color, he truly cared for the old goat. Flashback end. Naruto then found himself back in the restaurant with Mei. Ite not showing it. Naruto was truly sad that his sensei was gone. So, heard Ryu. Mei was there smiling at him. What was your father's name? Asked Mei, generally curious because if Ryu was an S-rank D ninja, that meant his father was powerful or was a hell of a great teacher. His name, said Naruto neutrally, but you could detect a hint of sadness in his voice. He had to think of a name quickly, but which one would be good? His name was Hedora Yokaze. Hedora Hydra sounds like a strong name, commented Mei. Wait, you said was? Yeah, he died about a year ago, said Naruto emotionlessly. You're probably also wondering why I have the Sharingan as well. Correct? Queried Naruto, to which Mei nodded. Deciding to fabricate a lie, Naruto did just that. I don't know why I have the Sharingan. I questioned my father about it, but he didn't tell me anything. But can we please stop talking about my past? It's quite uncomfortable and it brings back bad memories, commented Ryu. Just one more question, stated Mei as she bit her nail seductively. A few minutes passed and yet Ryu didn't want to give in to the Auburn woman's demands. Fine, said Naruto dejectedly. What was your mother's name? Asked Mei carefully, as she knew his mother was a touchy subject. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the question. He didn't know how to feel about his mother. Did she love him? Did she hate him like all the rest? Her name was Kushina Yokaze. She died the day I was born, but not from childbirth, said Naruto agitatedly. I answered your question. I am not required to answer any more, spoke Naruto. Mei sighed. She knew that was all she could get from the man. For the rest of the evening the two cage-level shinobi talked and ate. Mei would throw a few flirts here and there and Naruto would take them as he usually did. Emotionlessly. After the dinner Mei said goodbye, left Ryu alone, who ventured back to his hotel room. It was cold, like a hungering winter. Chilling wasn't the word to describe the cold atmosphere. Everything was covered in a thick layer of ice. The trees, the leaves, even the flowers were entombed in a wasteland of frozen water. The wind howled like wolves and the gales were sharp enough to cut and freeze the blood in your veins. A black-clad man was standing in the middle of the desolation. The winds were cutting his skin and the frost was biting his muscles. But he was unaffected by the icy touch of the rime. His golden locks flayed in the gnawing wind as he stood stalwartly against the eerie onslaught of the icy tract. Instead of the dazzling sight of snow he faced a slaying blizzard. But he stood against the cold and just surveyed his surroundings. From the branches of the trees he could icicles dangling from the wood. And the trunks of the trees acted like mirrors, seeing everything within their vision. As he stood there he could make out figures within the mirrors of ice. There was a man with long white hair and red lines on his face, another man with a horizontal scar over his nose. A blonde-haired girl whose hair was tied in a ponytail, two people wearing hideous green jumpsuits and had large eyebrows where he originally thought they were caterpillars. A man with red eyes and wearing a black coat with red clouds, a red-haired boy with a tattoo of love on his forehead and a busty blonde-haired woman. They all appeared in the mirrors looking at him with dead eyes. And he stared BCK with as much ferocity. He then began to traverse through the blizzard walking by the trees. As a result the wind seemed to push against him as if trying to stop him from moving. But he fought through and endured the blistering frost eviscerated his blood freezing it, but he trekked on through the frozen storm. He walked for what seemed like hours until he came upon a unique tree. Unlike the rest of the trees in the cold forest, this one wasn't frozen over. Its bark and leaves looked more crystalline than frozen. The leaves seemed to droop down from the branches appearing as if it was a painting or a chandelier. He stood before the tree and inspected its form. Then he saw images within the tree of him and people who appeared to be his friends. And more images of him greeting people and wearing robes that looked familiar to him. And finally, as if the tree had a will of its own, its branches and leaves started to move together, forming a crystal mirror. And he saw her again. The pink-haired woman with the blonde-haired baby and a man with blonde hair who he assumed was himself. And yet this feeling of melancholy washed over him. He kept staring at the mirror for a minute or two before it shattered into pieces, surprising him. When he turned his back towards the tree he noticed that all the other trees were fracturing as well, before like the crystal shattered. And then a mighty gust of wind that forced him to shield his eyes approached. It blew away any remnants of the blizzard and the snow, leaving him standing on a field of ice as if he was standing on a rimmed ocean. When he looked down into the ice he saw something that made his breath hitch. It was a blonde-haired man, wearing the same clothing. However, there was something different about him. He looked older than the other blonde, his eyes were more narrow and he had a noticeable jawline along with a more narrow face. It felt like the original blonde was looking at an older version of himself. But there was one big difference between the two. This man's eyes were dull and lifeless even behind the valiant red. It's as if he was looking into the eyes of a dead man. Someone who died but still lived. "Just accept me," spoke the older blonde, however his voice was dark and deep, it sounded like the Kyuubi's. "I will erase everything that causes you pain. I will destroy everything that you hate in this world. Entrust your heart to me." The ice, the original blonde's feet began to crack and splinter. The ice couldn't handle the weight of the younger blonde and it collapsed upon itself. The younger found himself drifting within an ocean. Everywhere he looked he saw darkness but no light, not a spark. He found the older man hovering above him. The younger blonde's back collided with the seabed and the older held the younger by the throat with a vice-like grip and stood over him like a predator who had caught their prey. "What's the matter? Why do you hesitate?" asked the older blonde with an evil chuckle, had a dark smirk. The younger found it hard to breathe from all the water entering his lungs and the crushing grip of the older. "We need each other. You need my power. Without me you can't do anything, nothing at all. Now who do you wish to kill?" asked the older with the voice of the Kyuubi and the dark smirk. "Will be the ones who wronged you. The ones who always underestimated you. The ones who kept everything from you. The ones you loved, or the ones who denied you everything you deserved?" tempted the older blonde with his dark voice and insidious smirk. The younger found himself drawn to the older as if wanting to accept the power that he offered. "Yes, you understand now. With our prodigious vision and a chakra more ominous and sinister than his own, we will shape the world as he has always wanted to," continued the older man. "Just give me your heart," whispered the older man. He then placed the palm of his hand against his younger counterpart's forehead. "Finally," hissed the older. Naruto woke up within his hotel room. He noted that he was alone and that night AHD fully crept over Kurigakure. He was wearing his black armor except his arm's armor and coat. He never felt safe while sleeping except for in front of Madara. So he instead wore his armor. He had just had another night terror and it was the same way he had experienced 2 nights ago. Why was this happening to him? He felt himself grab the sword and kill the boy and yet he also felt his throat being crushed. Just what did this mean? His shinobi senses then kicked and he felt some chakra signatures outside his hotel room. But before he could react to anything, a canister burst through a window in his room. Then the canister started excreting yellow gas. And when he breathed it in, it strangely smelled like lavender. But he realized something was wrong. Naruto started having trouble breathing and molding his chakra. He dropped to his knees on the floor and tried to mold some chakra to escape, but his control was rapidly fluctuating and he couldn't focus. Suddenly the door to his room burst open, revealing 3 men wearing brown flak jackets and gas masks walked in carrying kunais. "There you are, Yokeis no Ryu, Dragon of the Night Wind," said one of the intruders. Naruto through the gas was able to make out the symbol of Iwagakure on their hitayates. Another Iwa nin took out a katana and ran straight toward Ryu, intent on killing. Ryu, knowing he didn't have much time to counterattack, focused a large amount of chakra into his right eye while also trying to stave off the effects of the gas. Instantly the black scythe-like shuriken with a red pinwheel around the pupil appeared in Naruto's right eye. And he thought the name of the jutsu he was going to use. Kamio Nanayo. Just before the Iwa nin could deliver the blow, something blocked his katana. "What?" whispered the nin. "Pathetic," thought Naruto. He was currently tied to a chair and bound with rope. "How did I get into this mess? Everything was going great before I was taken hostage and tied to a chair within a dark room with only one light, but did they have to take my shirt? Pathetic. If I could mold my chakra at the time I could have killed them easily, but the gas also had to mess with my senses, making taijutsu near impossible." Flashback. Kamio Nanayo, thought Naruto. Just before the killing blow was made, something blocked the katana of the Iwa nin. "What?" whispered the nin. It was a scythe, and the one who was holding it was a priest wearing black robes and a strange mask. The mask had 2 pointed ears resembling a fox and 3 eyes. The Iwa nin was cowering under the glare of the mask. Where did it come from? The black-robed priest pushed the Iwa nin back, and with a swing of its scythe a sickle-like wave appeared and cut through the nin, but it didn't kill him. But he found that all his chakra was gone, possibly that wave like energy drained his chakra from the black-robed priest's attack. The other Iwa shinobi were unsure of what to do. Their partner wasn't dead, so why was he just standing there? Naruto stared blankly at the nins, but his breathing was heavy from all the poisoned gas. He focused as much chakra as he could into his right eye, and a blue ring appeared behind him bearing the kanji for jewel. An angelic priestess burst through the ring. She wore flowing cream-colored robes and translucent ribbons. She too had a mask with 2 fox-like ears and 3 eyes, however she had a red crown-like accessory on its mask. The priestess gathered up chakra that the black-robed priest stole and focused intently. She created a glowing ball of white transparent chakra and threw it at the enemy shinobi, which forced them to fly back onto a street. They were relatively unharmed and their wounds were superficial. Naruto was struggling to stay conscious, but the Just You was wearing down all his chakra. The gas was causing his chakra control to go haywire, and the sleeping affect was hampering his physical abilities and was wearing down upon him swiftly. He was foolish to believe that the chakra signatures outside his hotel room were Kiri Shinobi May had sent, and he didn't focus on his sensor abilities to reveal the location of the shinobi who threw the canister into the room. Naruto was trying to maintain control and focus on his 2 creations. But the gas was affecting his concentration and he was becoming incredibly drowsy. He got up onto his feet and with his remaining strength propelled himself out of the hotel room, breaking through the walls. He landed on the ground but tumbled Abbott. His feet came in contact with the ground, coughing all the way, his 2 priests following after him. When he was outside, he saw that the Iwa shinobi had recovered from the priestess's attack. His remaining strength was waning on him and the blonde lost consciousness and his 2 priests puffed away in smoke. No, oh, Nei and Kiri were able to get to the disturbance fast enough to ascertain who caused it, and by then the enemy shinobi had already taken Naruto. Flashback end. When Naruto woke up, he found out that he was tied to a chair in a dark room. He could only guess that the Iwa Nins captured him and later restrained him. He was currently wondering where Konan was. Was she trying to rescue him, or did she not give a shit about him? And where was Zetsu when you needed him most? Deciding that Naruto was just going to sit back and find out what the Iwa Nins wanted, he relaxed in the chair, not caring about a NY thing in particular or what the Iwa Nins were going to do. Did they want to bring him to Iwa to turn him into a breeder for the Sharingan? The ancient and stubborn Kage Onoki probably wanted him to join his village. Or was it out of revenge for all the Iwa Nins he killed a few days ago? He sighed happily. He was going to enjoy whatever amusing torture the Iwa Nins had in mind. Madara had Persona LLY put Naruto through the worst kind of torture imaginable by using Tsukuyomi to keep him within the world for days, torturing him non-stop. Zetsu questioned the old mon's sanity at the time, believing that it was overkill to keep a person within Tsukuyomi for weeks at a time, torturing them. Although the end result was amazing. It helped Naruto build up his mental fortitude and gave him a high resistance to pain. His thoughts then traveled to one of his dojutsu's techniques. The Kamionanayo was described by Madara to be the greatest battle jutsu in the world. With it, Naruto could create his unique beings made entirely out of his chakra. It was similar to the Susanoo but on a more advanced level, where like the Susanoo it created beings made of chakra, but instead of a skeletal soldier, he beings made from the Kamionanayo were more like shock troopers than soldiers. But there was more to the Kamionanayo than creating personal guardians with their own individual powers. There was far more to that eye ability than the Tsukuyomi or even the forbidden eye techniques of the Uchiha clan. Naruto had accidentally discovered this exclusive ability when he added too much chakra into his eye when practicing with the Blaze release. The result was 9 created constructs, each with a different shape and abilities. However, that was for the right eye. The left eye was far more versatile and powerful, but both eyes at once using the Kamionanayo was truly a jewel among pearls. Naruto tried to focus his chakra, but he found that his chakra was being actively suppressed. Focusing even he found the chakra suppression seal on the nape of his neck. From all he knew about Iwagakure, he knew that they were at least decent in seals. The chakra suppression seal was created by the Uzumaki clan, Naruto's clan. So he knew the advantages and drawbacks of the seal, and he could use his knowledge to escape. That is, if someone rescues him before then. The shackles that were currently holding G were weak and made of soft flexible metal, therefore it would be easy for him to break, in part to his physical strength that he advanced in the years. But he knew that even with taijutsu he wasn't on the level of Might Guy, the green idiot of the hidden leaf. But he was confident enough that he believed he could kill the Iwa Nins with one hand. But then he remembered his capture. He truly was pathetic that shinobi fodder such as Iwa could capture him. He admitted that the only people who could defeat him were Nagato and possibly Obito. Nagato because of his skill with the Rinnegan and his experience in battle. But the leader of the Akatsuki's arrogance was a weakness he needed to fix. And Obito, but that was because Naruto overestimated him. Naruto was brought out of his musings by a door opening in front of him. A person walked in wearing a brown flak jacket. He had slightly spiky, brown hair and brown eyes. When the Nin looked at Ryu, he sneered at the tied-up blonde. "Hello," said Ryu with an annoying smirk. The Nin narrowed his eyes at the Sharingan wielder. The Nin scrutinized the man in front of him. He was laid back and relaxed as if nothing could affect him in his content world despite being tied up like a criminal on trial. The blonde was also well sculpted in muscle, and there wasn't a scar on his body except for a spot above his heart where it looked like he was hit by a lightning bolt that arced outwards. "Can you untie these bonds, please?" The Iwa Nin looked up to see Naruto smirking at him happily. "Can you please untie these bonds?" stated Naruto with a big grin as if finding the situation funny. The Iwa Nin's eye twitched a little in annoyance. "My name is Kuri Ganseki. I am a Jonin in service to Tsuchikage-sama and," but he stopped his sentence when he ticked. Naruto wasn't listening, as if he wasn't worth his attention. He gained a tick mark on his forehead at the level of attention Naruto was giving him. "Hey," yelled Kuri. Naruto snapped his head and gave him his attention to the nin. What? Asked Naruto, shrugging his shoulders. Kuri's face puffed up in anger and he gained a prominent tick mark that was pulsing. You killed my brother, said Kuri, gritting his teeth. Though Naruto stared him blankly, which seemed to unnerve Kuri a little. Naruto sighed and breathed in some air. He closed his eyes and started thinking about who was the person he killed. But then he realized he didn't care. You think I care about your problems and you believe that I actually do, spoke Naruto as he opened his eyes. Honestly, I could care less who I kill. Why? Our brother did his duty as a shinobi serving his village. He died like a shinobi. No, he died like a dog, said Naruto scornfully. He then felt a fist impact against his face. Kuri was shaking with rage and he was grinding his teeth. But Naruto continued on with his psychological warfare, intent on finding what the shinobi wanted, but he guessed it was revenge. I slaughtered him just like all the others. He couldn't ever think of defeating me. None of them were worth my time, but it felt good watching his life slip away, lied Naruto. He was the ninja who I killed via